Well, my look through Reddit and Netty in under a minute seemed to do well, so let's tackle another Cartoon Network show in the same way with Samurai Jack. In the first episode, yeah, the show doesn't use official titles, we're introduced to the main villain Aku, an evil entity who's freed after years of being imprisoned and immediately seeks revenge against the Japanese warrior who trapped him. The kingdom is laid to waste and the warrior is captured, but not before instructing his son to begin his training and one day rise against Aku, and thus begins a long journey of the young samurai who will one day be known as Jack. Right off the bat, there's a lot to unpack, so I'm gonna have to go over a minute for this first part. From the very start, it's clear that creator Genndy Tartakovsky's strength and minimalism he demonstrated in his previous projects is on full display. Using flat shapes and simple line work, the artists create very distinctive cultures and standout character design, where it's impossible to confuse one with another and show just how fast and varied the world Jack has to travel truly is. And it has to be, because most of the show in general is told through visuals with minimal dialogue, so shapes, colors, and posing are instrumental in keeping the audience's attention, which the show passes with flying colors, though the emphasis on simplicity also results in occasional awkward character expressions. But it does make scenes where there is a great amount of detail stand out even more, especially with his beautiful ink paintings telling Jack's father's backstory. Jack in general is an okay character, he's just there to be the everyman hero, but his large range of emotions and occasional reminder he's not perfect help to make him interesting and relatable. I also like that while Jack is being trained to be a warrior, he's given a good education in general, because hey, he has to fill a leadership role after he's done fighting evil. Though it is kind of funny that all these tutors were just standing by all around the world, and I'm pretty sure the travel alone would take most of Jack's lifetime, but I digress. After traveling the world and training all his life, Jack is given the sword his father used to originally imprison Aku and journeys to have his own showdown against a cosmic being, but not before stopping by to free his father from one of Aku's slave camps. This is where the show starts to show its strength in action sequences. Again, they're working with a limited budget, so every pose has to deliver, and by guy do they deliver. Every movement has weight behind it, every shot accomplishes something. Just by freezing on a still, you can tell how much force was behind every single strike and where it came from. It's like a very well-drawn comic book with some in-between frames. And yeah, the show is notoriously violent, but they get away with it by having the villains be robots or slimy aliens, or for this battle, shadow creatures. At least until season 5, but we'll get to that later. After freeing his father, Jack is warned not to let his guard down before he goes to his first and supposedly last confrontation with Aku, who, as many already know, is one of the greatest villains in media. His animation and voice are comedically over the top, yet he proves himself over and over again to be a sadistic god who revels in chaos and destruction and a threat to be taken seriously. As shown when he and Jack finally battle and Aku unleashes his shapeshifting abilities that Jack is forced to adapt to encounter, very much like a video game final boss. Combined with anime, as Genndy was clearly inspired by Japanese animation when envisioning this. This whole battle, as well as the episode in general, is a masterpiece, and if it ended with Jack victorious, this would be a fantastic short film, but Jack does let his guard down, allowing a weakened Aku to tear open a portal and fling Jack through space and time, truly beginning the samurai's many lonely journeys. Episode 2 begins with the portal depositing Jack thousands of years into the future, into a world completely dominated by Aku and one more strange and hostile than anything he encountered on his many travels. It's here he officially gets his name from a street gang, who passively address him as Jack while admiring his acrobatics, and I guess he adopts it to hopefully fit in with his new surroundings. His culture shock quickly gets him into trouble as he wanders into a club mostly inhabited by aliens, and his staring offends one of the more violent species, whom he has to unwillingly fight, and is good for the censors that they all just so happen to have their limbs replaced with cybernetics. But his heroics get the attention of a group of highly evolved dogs who hire him to free them from Aku's enslavement, who also learns of Jack's return through his network of spies and sends an army of robots to finish him off. This episode continues to build on Jack's character and shows he's ever learning. After his battle with Aku and an encounter with hover cars that results in a large amount of destruction, he realizes he can't rely on violence for everything and uses his dexterity to dodge the next hazard. And he tries his best to avoid conflict with the aliens, only resorting to violence when they do, and even then only literally disarming them. It's something I feel the past Jack wouldn't have done. And yet, this has one of the highest on-screen non-robotic body counts of the series. Jack kills a highway patrol, accidentally gets a driver killed, and oh yeah, there's a field of crucified canines. Holy crap, I'm impressed they got away with that. Still, I'm also impressed with how quickly Jack acclimates to the new inhabitants and recognizes that duty trumps xenophobia. This episode also continues to wow with its action scenes, including split screen and silhouette effects and more dynamic widescreen shots. So Jack is quickly adapting to his new world, but will Aku's forces stop his quest before it begins? Episode 3 continues from the last, with Aku's army bearing down on the group. Thus, Jack must defend them every way he can. Most of the episodes is one big fight scene, so there's not as much plot to sum up, but there's still a lot to analyze. Like, I love how Jack doesn't know how to use a pen, but one of the dogs is happy to show him, and he in turn shows how quickly he learns. Speaking of which, this episode shows just how important it was that Jack got a full education. Instead of just diving in, sort of blazing like someone only trained to fight, he plans out the attack, sets up traps, prepares himself for the oncoming invasion like a master strategist, and it's a lot of fun seeing everything being set up and that Jack adapts so quickly to the futuristic technology. Even if it's alien to him, it still has a familiar use, and he uses it as such, including these hovering tongue diggers that, again, I absolutely love. So when the horde of beetle robots arrive, they're ready. I kinda wish the dogs had more involvement in the fight, even if it's just setting off traps, since Jack seems a little too OP otherwise, but it's still awesome seeing the enormous army reduced to almost nothing by comparatively primitive weapons. So when they run out of traps and there's still beetles to fight, Jack must take them on personally. Again, I'm surprised they got away with this on TV, because wow, does Jack get savage. But it's all worth it to see more incredible cinematic techniques, including slow motion that were clearly inspired by classic Japanese cinema. And when Jack slices through the beetles and tubes of oil spray all over him, again, this is as violent as you can get without actually being violent. And it's freaking awesome. Honestly, if all we ever got was this 3-part parley movie, this would still be one of the best animated movies ever made. But thankfully it went to series, so let's see where this road takes Jack next. Episode 4 starts the series proper. Jack comes across a monkey-like race who have dominated a large hairy species called woolies that they use for labor and entertainment, but the longer Jack stays, the more questions he has, including if the woolies truly are just non-intelligent beasts of burden. I love how the show establishes that Aku's forces aren't Jack's only worry. There's also the constant threat of starvation during his long travels, and the promise of food may override some of his doubts and common sense, hence why he's happy to follow these tiny creatures despite their cruelty to the seemingly docile working animals. Oh, and I love the voice they're given, sort of a mix between Jack Nicholson and Eddie DeZean, though I don't know why they lie to him and say they're the original settlers when they obviously aren't, since as far as they know, Jack is on their side. But it does lead to an awesome shadowy dream sequence where Jack's not sure if he should side with the woolies, since there might be a reason the other aliens have subjugated them. But no, it turns out that they're sapient and originally a utopian civilization until the smaller aliens enslaved them. So Jack sneaks into the aliens' camp to destroy the orb, keeping the woolies bound, but despite this awesome toe gravel catch, ends up waking them up. But he frees one of the woolies with his sword, which was never brought up he could do and he could have done earlier, and the day is saved through Tom and Jerry logic. So yeah, obviously not as good as the pilot episodes, and I have a million questions that are never answered, but that's to be expected going forward. And as long as it keeps the action fluid and interesting, which this episode does, that's really what we're all here for. Oh, and the occasional kill shot that's snuck by the censors. Episode 5 features Jack's first true chance at getting home. Jack runs from Aku's minions, only to inadvertently lead them to a group of astronauts building an escape ship to flee Aku's domain. The cover blown, Jack volunteers to help them get through Aku's space blockade, and in return, they promise to provide her way home. I do love how they prepare Jack for space travel in a very similar way to actual astronauts, including riding a bike underwater and upside down to simulate zero gravity, though I wish they went a little more cartoonish with Jack's expressions in the G-Force simulator. And it's another example of how adaptable Jack is. He's never been in a rocket-powered spacesuit before, but once he learns the controls, he's Buzz freaking Lightyear, and when they're in space, he finds that severing the bodies of Aku's robotic bug armada isn't enough to stop them. So he uses his experience with repelling ticks to fully disable the heads. Again, new technology, familiar methods. And like I mentioned, they do present a probable scenario where once they reach light speed, they could theoretically send Jack through time and back to his own year, but once they're about to launch Jack's pod, Jack has to abort to prevent a large laser cannon from destroying the ship and killing the astronauts. Even though if he just stayed in the pod and let it launch, he'd be sent back to his own time and could stop this from ever happening, making this one of several episodes where Jack's loyalty technically overrides his sense. We could also point out that there's no way Jack would survive re-entry and the fall back to Earth, but this isn't the show for that brand of logic. Overall, an okay episode where not much happens, but the visuals continue to impress, so it's my headcanon the ship blew up halfway through when this loose coffee flew into one of their systems. While the 2 episodes after the pilot arc were okay but nothing special, episode 6 is easily one of the series' best. Jack journeys to a Middle Eastern-inspired culture where he's told of a powerful jewel that can grant his wish, but he's ambushed by Aku's minions and saved by a mysterious woman who also needs the jewel to save her father. Thus the two set off to find it together. Okay, judging by her color scheme and general shape, you can probably tell where this is going, but as a kid watching this for the first time, I didn't catch on, and I really dug the relationship between her and Jack. Two lost souls wandering a dangerous world, one with a little bit more experience who can help Jack with unfamiliar dangers, while he in turn saves her from sudden perils. Yeah, these two are meant for each other in a friendly and even possibly romantic sense, and is a much better relationship than the one Jack would later be, and all made even more powerful by how this episode is even less dialogue heavy than usual. Most of their travels are presented in a mostly silent montage, backed by the occasional sound effect and a really freaking good techno beat. It's just so much fun seeing that long trek represented by actions and gestures, and the relationship clearly getting stronger and stronger without them saying a single word, with some subtle hint of the twist placed throughout, which by the way, yeah, they find the jewel and she smashes it, of course revealing to have been Aku all this time. Oh my god, the sudden reveal and the wave after wave of betrayal Jack is feeling as he tries to wrap his mind around everything is one of the most powerful moments in the entire show, and further solidifies Aku as a force to be reckoned with, showing he's just as wily as he is powerful, able to manipulate someone's kindness and loyalty to his own ends, and knowing it was the woman all along makes it hilarious to go back and listen to the voice actress trying to mimic Aku's speaking style. This ending is one of the best moments in all of animation and catapults this episode into the top 10. But why did their camels disappear halfway through? Episode 7 is one of the most well-known episodes of the entire show. A Wush-granting well hides in a tower in the middle of the forest, but it's guarded by 3 seemingly invincible archers, and since they took down an entire army, Jack must discover their weakness if he alone is to have a chance. In a first for the series, Jack doesn't show up for a good chunk of runtime, as the episode begins on a long battle sequence to show just how impassable the archers are. It's another glorious battle and ultra gory without actually being gory, and once Jack learns about the well and goes to the island it's located, his battle is split into 2 parts. First he tries brute forcing it, avoiding arrows as best as he can and even trying to blind his opponents, but failing and barely escaping with his life. Then he notices something, experiences with it, and prepares himself for part 2. Watching the show as an adult, I'm just as entertained with scenes of Jack learning and adapting as I am the flashy battle scenes, if not more. I love seeing the gears in Jack's head turn as he realizes the archers are blind but possess god-level hearing and reflexes, and he realizes he has to fight them on their own level, blindfolding himself and meditating until he's so attuned he can hear each individual snowflake. Thus when he returns, he hears and avoids every whoosh the arrows flying straight at him as he somehow silently climbs the tower. Yeah, okay, not every moment in this episode is perfect, but it's worth it to see the archers done in by their own skill, who turns out to be humans cursed by the well to serve as guardians, which means Jack also has to destroy the well and ruin another chance at getting home. I'd say watch this episode, but it's likely you already have. It's often considered one of the best episodes of an animated show in general, so even people who don't watch the series are still familiar with it. And for an episode to represent this show, it doesn't get much better than this one. Oh wait, this guy switches between having 4 fingers or 5. 0 out of 10, worst episode ever. Episode 8 introduces a new hazard for Jack, bounty hunters. Yeah, Aku's offering a lot of money to see Jack dead, and anyone with more brawn than brains is looking to collect, as Jack has to learn anytime he just wants a roof over his head and a nice pot of tea. After the mind-blowing scope and detail of the last 2 episodes, this one feels like they just wanted to take a short break and just be creative for the sake of being creative. So it's mostly just watching Jack being awesome, as if he really needs to prove himself. But while this one isn't the most impactful episode we've seen, it's still a lot of fun, especially seeing all the different creature designs for the bounty hunters and their machines. And yeah, I absolutely love this part with the elephant. The main plot, I guess we could call it, occurs about halfway through, when Aku, realizing no one can beat Jack but Jack, creates a mirror image of him out of the negativity Jack is currently feeling. It's Jack versus Jack, and a little underwhelming to be honest, especially since I'm pretty sure it was mostly done to save a little bit on the season's budget. But it's still amazing to watch as the 2 samurai inflict similar damages on each other to enforce that they are indeed mirror images, and even the forest burns with their fury. In a sequence I can't show since I am worried it could trigger seizures. Of course, Jack realizes that his clone feeds on his rage, so the only way to defeat it is to just stop being angry. And it works, like it works in pretty much every other evil clone created by Magic story from every other action cartoon. Still, while this episode is nowhere near as epic as the previous 2, it's a very fun time and a great bit of filler that's worth your 20 minutes. Oh wait, I forgot Jack lost his hand. I'll give this one another 0 out of 10. Episode 9 is where Jack is hit by shipwreckage and drowns. The end. Oh no, wait, he's rescued by fish people and taken to their city of Oceanus, where he's welcomed and promised he can use their time machine to head home. But it turns out to all be a trick, and they mean to trade him to Aku so he'll raise their cities back to the surface, which he reneges on, triggering a large-scale underwater fight that only Jack can stop if they can get to him in time. Yeah, this is another one that's mostly style over substance. Not a whole lot going on, and just another excuse to be creative. But that said, it is still creative. The undersea creatures in City really do stand out and are fun to watch, especially the fish people, who look like cartoon depictions of sea monkeys, and well, just look at how they walk. I'm pretty sure the voice actors are told to use the first celebrity voice they could think of for these characters, since there's really no reason they sound like Ringo Starr, Alec Guinness, and Sean Connery. Heck, that's Mark Hamill doing the Guinness impression. That is so many levels of reference right there. The battle against Aku is also pretty entertaining, even though we know exactly how it's going to turn out. It lets us see what an underwater civilization's army would look like, and gives Aku an excuse to do more shapeshifting, this time into sea creatures. And yeah, this is technically another episode with a high body count, since I'm pretty sure most of these soldiers and the inhabitants of these destroyed domes don't make it to the end. But yeah, they save Jack, he sends Aku packing, and I guess the fish people got what they wanted, and Jack continues his journey. Overall, not a bad episode, just not really essential. Though I don't want to be within 5 miles of Jack once that sushi goes bad. Okay, I'm not gonna make friends for this, but episode 10 is not one of my favorites. Jack is is summoned by a strange voice to a cavern where everything tries to kill him, and surviving that, he's rewarded by being forced to fight to the death to free an imprisoned Viking king. Now, the episode's not bad. In fact, it has some of the fastest paced action of the season. For the first half, the cavern is relentlessly trying to end Jack, who has no time to breathe as he dodges spikes, lava, steam, and even slamming barricades while trying to get to the center and see who's behind all this. It feels like a video game. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what they had in mind, especially since it ends in a boss battle who literally says, "Welcome to your doom." It also has some funny moments. I like the cartoon gag where the character has to realize they're not standing on anything before they fall. And at one point, Jack says the voice must think he's stupid if he thinks he'll go towards the thing trying to kill him, but the ceiling starts falling and he admits he is stupid as he retreats further in. I got a chuckle. It's when he gets to the warrior that I start tuning out. Now, I do love the warrior story being told in the style of Nordic stone carving, and how he was imprisoned by a coup, but through sheer willpower created an immortal rock body in a cavern of traps in hopes he can summon a strong warrior to give him an honorable Viking death in combat. Even though I'm pretty sure summoning random people to be unknowingly slaughtered isn't exactly honorable. And then we have a fight scene, which is a fight scene I have nothing to comment on. Like I said, I don't hate this episode, it just doesn't feel like it has as much substance or even excitement as the rest of season 1. Heck, I remember watching it as a kid and feeling bored. If you like this one, good for you. It's just, in my opinion, the weakest and most non-essential of the season. Also, the smile the warrior gives as he carried to Valhalla is really uncanny and kind of ruins the tone they're going for. Episode 11 introduces fan favorite character, the Scotsman. While crossing an impossibly long rope bridge, Jack encounters a large Scottish warrior coming the other way. The guy's too proud to let Jack pass and insists they fight to the death, but they have to put their fight on hold as they're both tracked down by bounty hunters and have to work together to escape. I think we as a species just love large, burly, aggressive characters with funny dialogue from the heart of gold. Seriously, show me one that hasn't worked in media. And in terms of those characters, the Scotsman is one of the major standouts. Why? Because he has a machine gun for a leg. Case closed. Also, he's a loudmouth with a wide range of insults, which could make him unlikable, but he weaves such a tapestry of taunting you're just left smiling at his wit. Plus, he's just as skilled a warrior as Jack with his own magic sword, so he could be considered some parallel universe version of Jack. And it is hilarious seeing these two grown adults squabbling like two kids who think they're mature arguing in a comment section, as well as their victories against each other's accessories. But the bounty hunters track them down and they have to jump for it while chained together, which honestly doesn't add anything and could have been left out, especially since the Scotsman's sword can clearly cut through metal, yet they don't use it to break the handcuffs. But it does result in a great battle against robot hillbilly bounty hunters, including the scat-talking pig sheriff, who also has his own fan following. And I love how the robot alligators flash before exploding, like they're video game characters. Plus another body count that's snuck by censors. So while the pacing is actually some of the worst we've seen so far, with a very rushed final act, it's the humorous writing and camaraderie between Jack and the Scotsman that make this another of the show's best episodes. Also, I love when they sneak in alcohol in a kid's show. Episode 12 is surprisingly dark when you think about it. Jack saves a gangster mob from a shootout and is made a member, being promised to meet a coup if he can get something for them that's worth the coup's attention. So yeah, Jack works with the bad guys in this one. Sure, he tricks them into thinking he murdered the owner of an animal shelter when he got everyone out at the last moment, but he still blew up the building and probably everything the guy owned. And the thing they send Jack to retrieve, the Neptune jewel, is being intentionally guarded from a coup who wants to use it to gain control over all the world's water. So Jack destroys benevolent guardians who just want to keep the jewel from evil and are some of the very few beings that are a match for a coup just so he can have a chance at another showdown with the demon. Yeah, this reminds me of Chrono Cross or Ultima 9, where at one point our otherwise noble heroes end up causing irreversible damage just so they can get to the next part of the quest. And have Jack doing all this, who up to this point was the paragon of virtue, is messed up hilarious. I don't know if they just didn't think the script through or if it's intentionally here to show that Jack sometimes has to do the wrong thing for the right reason. There are also quite a few mature elements. Besides the regular robot violence, there are a lot of realistic guns, there's gambling, and the lead gangster has a cigar, all major no-nos in cartoons even back then. All that said, I do really enjoy this episode, mostly for everything I pointed out, and I like the designs of the gangsters, like they're cousins of the anthill mob from Wacky Races. Oh, and the bad guys win, by the way. Jack naively leaves them with the jewel, and now they have control of the city's water that they sell for exorbitant prices. So yeah, this episode is worth watching just for the what the hell is anyone thinking mindset everyone, especially Jack, displays in it. Also, if the gem is heavily guarded in a mountain, how did it end up in a public works building? Episode 13 closes out season 1 in a very unique way. Tales of Jack's heroics have reached the children of the world, angering a coup who gathers them together to tell his own tales of how super awesome he is and how Jack is actually the villain. And the rest is him telling twisted versions of popular fairy tales, but with the coup as the hero and Jack as various bad guys. I just love that a coup feels the need to justify himself to these children, try to set himself up as a champion when he has no problem demonstrating to the adults how much of a psychopathic tyrant he is. And yeah, let's be honest, if this wasn't a kid's show, all these kids would be dead. It's even more hilarious that he tries to speak to them on their level by trying to relate his benevolence to Jack's cruelty in the form of well-known fairy tales. And the result sounds like the most self-aggrandizing, self-insert fanfiction you can imagine. Oh, I'm a coup and I have laser eyes and awesome combat skills. Don't follow Jack, he's just a meanie poo-poo head. Oh my god, this is great, especially seeing a coup in that Little Red Riding Hood getup. And the designs they give Jack to make him seem like a monster are just as funny. Honestly, I don't want to say much about this episode. This is one you absolutely have to see yourself to get the full effect, especially as a coup gets more and more desperate and finally gives up entirely. And the unconvinced children tell their own tale of how Jack will one day vanquish a coup. So while this is a departure for the series, focusing more on comedy over action, and the first where the real Jack technically doesn't even show up, this is a hilarious episode that will probably have you laughing all throughout, both at the intentional humor and listening to a coup trying to narrate while slowly losing all dignity. Great closeout to the season. Also, I love that the kid who does a Jack impression is named Phil in reference to Jack's actual voice actor. Episode 14 starts off season 2, but not very strongly. Jack comes across a time portal, but the coup grabs it and holds it just out of his reach, taunting him all the while. Later, Jack comes across a man who is raised by a species of primates who have the ability to jump incredibly high, and in return for Jack teaching them how to defend against a rival tribe of apes, they teach him how to jump good, as they put it. And that's really all there is to it. Yeah, this episode honestly doesn't give me a lot to comment on. It's just Jack is adopted by the ape tribe, he fights off a group of rival apes, he teaches them how to set up traps, and the friendly apes teach him how to jump high, which basically comes down to strapping very heavy weights to his back and limbs to strengthen his muscles. I guess the montage of Jack getting used to the weights is fine, and a little funny just how impossibly quickly his muscles develop, and the final battle where the friendly apes use the traps to scare off their rivals is exciting enough, but there's really not much holding my attention. Even the ape people are just simplistic drawings of monkeys, and the end fight lacks a lot of the weight and style that the first season had. And yeah, Jack tracks down the portal, which Aku again holds out of reach, but this time Jack is nimble and quick enough to reach it, and the episode seriously ends there. Yes, really, we never find out what happens next, and given there's still quite a bit of show left, apparently the portal didn't do anything. Was this one made just in case the show got canceled, they needed a very quick wrap-up to show how Jack possibly got home? Because besides that theory, there's really nothing to this episode. It's not terrible, just not necessary, and you can skip it and miss nothing. Also, I don't like Jeff Bennett's monkey boy voice. Episode 15 is an anthology episode comprised of 3 separate stories. In the first, Jack comes across a two-headed worm who promises to grant his wish if he can solve the riddle. In the second, Jack is ambushed by a group of humans who are desperate for food, and in the third, Jack must rescue a fairy who can grant his wish to return home. So I have different thoughts for each segment. The first one starts out okay, but begins to try my patience as these worms are clearly just trolling Jack and by proxy the audience, and their voices very quickly start grating on my ears. So it is a little funny Jack doesn't know what a knock-knock joke is, and I'm always impressed when someone is able to decipher the riddle of who's telling the truth and who's lying, but Jack is tricked and it just ends with no resolution. The second I think is really good. A family's lost in the woods and asks Jack for food, but it turns out the food they want is Jack's sword, and he has to fight who he thought were regular humans but become more and more inhuman as the fight goes. To the point Jack ends up slicing off one of their faces, so it's lucky for him the group turned out to be robots, cannibalistic robots with a taste for metal who then devour each other. This is one of the scariest images in the show, and again, major body horror without actually being gory. The third is moderately entertaining, where Jack tries to save the wish-granting fairy, but gets himself trapped as well, and while trying to free them both, accidentally wakes the gargoyle, who delivers a comedically large amount of punishment to him. Jack ends up killing the gargoyle, but learns too late, only yet knew the magic words to open the prison, meaning Jack has to use his only wish to wish both of them free. Overall, these stories are fine, though I like the middle one best. I get the impression there were plots the team couldn't figure out how to make full length, so they stuffed them all into one and made a pointless but fun filler episode. And yes, that is Tim Curry voicing Deadpool Worm in the first story. Episode 16 is the first truly action-packed one of the season. Jack is captured by slavers and taken to a coliseum, where he's forced to engage other fighters in gladiatorial combat. And there's your runtime. Yeah, it's another episode just here to show off how awesome Jack is, and for the character artists to show how creative they can be. An impressively designed gladiator enters the ring, Jack takes him down. An impressively designed gladiator enters the ring, Jack takes him down. Repeat that a couple times, and that's the episode. The most thrilling element is seeing just how proficient Jack is in multiple weapon classes. His sword is out of reach, so he shows just how well he can fight with the staff, the trident, the shield, the nunchucks, and even his bare freaking hands he uses to punch an opponent's arm off. Holy crap, I want the protein powder this guy ingests every morning. But it also shows how restrained Jack is, refusing to kill a helpless opponent and using whatever methods he can to non-bloodily incapacitate them. Heck, he defeats one fighter by tickling them. Yeah, someone found their fetish with this, I'm sure. Though he's not above maiming his attackers, and I'm pretty sure there's still a body count. Still, it's good to see a fighter who knows what he needs to do to get things accomplished. He's not playing an ace when a 2 is all he needs, and those jumping lessons he got a few episodes back are clearly paying off. I don't have anything else to say. It's just a fun, action-filled episode that's brutal without actually being brutal and shows just how good yet restrained a fighter Jack can be. It's not one of the best, but it is still fun to watch, and at one point a fighter goes primal, foreshadowing what Tartakovsky also did. Episode 17 is the return of the Scotsman, who saves Jack from a group of bounty hunters before enlisting him to help save his wife from a Celtic god. This episode takes all the elements that made the Scotsman's first appearance great and improves on each of them. It's once again really funny, with a lot of good jokes mixed in with a lot of energetic battle sequences. This wanted poster alone is worth a good chuckle. Then there's the contrast between Jack and the Scotsman, how one is quiet and thoughtful and the other is loud and brash, and yet their fighting styles complement each other perfectly. We also get to see a bit of the Scotsman's homeland, which okay, I'm not gonna pretend I know if any of this is accurate, but it's easy to see how the Scotsman is the way he is. It's also here Jack is told he has to pass the test to be considered worthy to help, and we get another example of Jack using his head as well as muscle. He can't throw the stone he's expected to, so he uses his knowledge of judo to throw a man weighing even more and passes with flying colors. But the funniest part is when they get to the castle and we see the Scotsman's wife. All throughout the episode, he talks her up like she's a beautiful, dainty little blossom, and when we meet her, she's not that. In fact, she's even larger and louder than he is, which you wouldn't think was possible, but it does lead to one of the best scenes in the series where they have to carry her down the stairs and they change positions every time we can't see them. I'm a sucker for that gag. And when they're seemingly outmatched and can't go on, the wife shows she can handle herself, to put it mildly, and that she does indeed love her husband as much as he does her. What else can I say? This is another fantastic episode that even fixes the pacing problem I had with the first one, and one of the show's best. But don't badmouth Haggis, I've had it and it's delicious. Episode 18 is another of the show's most brutal. Tired of Jack's meddling, Aku commissions 8 robot assassins made out of the strongest material possible, then sends them to find Jack, which they do by raising 4 cities to get his attention and lead them right to them. Yeah, the body count in this episode is through the roof. Oh sure, it's mostly robots, but wow, the amount of violence done to these robots and how detailed these kill shots are almost make that a moot point. And at least one organic city is raised, and we even get an on-screen death where the cute critter takes his last breath, and once Jack tracks down the assassins, god, he is brutalized. Oh, he can't even nick them. Luckily, the original creator and professional Jerry Lewis impressionist is nearby, and since Aku destroyed his city, he constructs a bionic arm that allows Jack to slice through the framework. What follows is a battle on the same level as episode 3 in terms of amazing cinematic technique, and just holy hell levels of brutality to the robots and even to Jack, who's cut up more than an onion during this fight, and elicits even more tears. Now, admittedly, the fight's a bit of a letdown with how easily most of the robots are taken out, and I think it's because they have to work 8 different droids, each with their own fighting style, into a 3-minute battle. I would have combined them into maybe 3 or 4 warriors to give them more time to be impactful. Not to say that what we already get isn't one of the best choreographed and animated fight scenes ever put into a cartoon show. Heck, with how much oil he spills, I'm pretty sure Jack's real name is Exxon, and when the armor runs out of power, never fear. Jack is blessed by the universe itself, who sends a sudden burst of consecrated whoop-ass that cleaves through the final robot. So while this is another episode just dedicated to showing off how awesome Jack is, it's one of the best in just how epic the fight scenes can get, and how epic Jack himself is made to look, but most importantly, he learns what a high five is. Episode 19 gives a long-awaited look into more of Jack's backstory. After saving a rat city from cats who ride grasshoppers, yes really, Jack stumbles across the ruins of his home city and spends the rest of the episode reminiscing. This is one of, if not the most mellow episode of the show. After the opening fight, there is very little action to be seen as we just watch Jack relive his childhood. But even so, seeing Jack lost in thought as he looks back on happier times is just as impactful as the most brutal fights he's been in. We see him as a child running through wheat fields trying to catch bugs, and he's joined by a young girl his age. Who is she? We're never told, but it doesn't matter. She's a symbol of more innocent times and the beauty of a tranquil land. We also see Jack witnessing a samurai taking on a group of bandits on a bridge, which again, we know less than he does what's going on, but it was probably the moment that influenced Jack's fascination with the sword. Then we see Jack having to deal with bullies, where he learns from his father nothing worth having is easily kept, and has one of the earliest examples of Jack using brain over brawn to defeat the enemy. It's nice to take a break and be reminded that, as seemingly indestructible as Jack is, he's still human. He had to learn everything he knows now and experience many things to become the person he is. Now, I'd be lying if I said this was one of my favorite episodes. It does start to drag, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of kids and even adults back when it was on TV got pretty bored. Also, while most of Jack's memories are silent, the final one suddenly features talking, even though, like the previous segments, everything's relayed perfectly through action, so I don't know why they had to waste the money. However, this episode is a nice break in the action to remind us of what Jack is fighting for, and that while he'd be happy reminiscing forever, he has responsibility and must keep moving to complete his mission. Also, I like him riding his own robot grasshopper, as it shows how much he's adapting to this world. Episode 20 is another pretty chill episode. After losing yet another path back home, Jack is at the end of his rope, but he runs into some monks who tell him they're about to scale an unconquerable mountain with a great prize at the top. A hopeful Jack tags along with them, and the rest is seeing them climb the formation. Unlike the previous episode, this one has quite a few action sequences, as Jack is forced to fight goat people, rock golems, and yes, the abominable snowman. So it's not as slow paced, and it's again nice that Jack has to be reminded of his discipline and that the warrior is more than just a fighter. At one point, Jack dismisses the monks gathering seemingly worthless rocks, only to find later that they actually contain food. Something he could have also done for, at least I think, because they never indicate if he's hungry, which leads to my biggest problem with this episode. Jack is just too OP. He's supposed to be at his lowest point, ready to just throw in the towel and give up on his quest completely, and yet he survives this and this and this and this and this and goes back for more. I'm sorry, it's just really hard to relate to someone who survives having his face ground into a mountain yet still insists he's too weak to press on, so when he finally gives up and has to have a near-death hallucination to remind him what he's giving up on, I don't see someone completely exhausted, I see a whiny baby who just needs a nap. So of course he goes on and eventually reaches the summit, where the great prize is just realizing he accomplished the impossible and renewing his will to go on. Which wasn't that the whole point of the last episode? Why did we do 2 in a row? And this shot is so weirdly edited. I originally thought the joke was that Jack had a whole range of mountains to get over before he reached the summit, and he'd realize he had more important things to do. Again, this episode's not terrible, and it kept my attention more than the last, but it's one of the season's weakest. Also, were the monks real or not? Episode 21 is different. A horrible stench threatens a nearby town, so Jack must venture inside a dragon to cure it of its continual farting. I'm not joking. I guess after how heavy the last few episodes were, they wanted something a little more fun and lighthearted, and I guess we got that. I remember enjoying this one as a kid, but watching it again, I couldn't remember why. Most of the humor is really annoying, especially when Jack is lectured by a farmer when he called him poor and unfortunate. Also, haha, fart cloud so thick, Jack can cut him with the sword. Though the Scissorsmith gets a few good lines, including why his wife was turned into a crow, and this is where that Dragon's Lair Space Ace meme comes from. I guess if you're 10 and fart jokes are your comedy, this is all funny, but as an adult, the first half is pretty painful to sit through. Also, giant moth for some reason. However, the true joy comes from when Jack, well, enters the dragon, who's apparently bigger on the inside and has an entire ecosystem as innards. A lot of people brush off the Dragon's Lair comment as a cute reference, but I'm pretty positive this is the team actually paying tribute to that game. The colorful environments, the crazy creatures, the scene transition timing, even the over-the-top comedic expressions from a mostly silent Jack all make me feel like I should be pushing a joystick in the direction of the flashing light. Weirdly, another thing that impresses me is that the team remember one of Jack's sandals is missing, so most of his trek is done with the bare foot, kind of like the Ed and Eddie movie. He does magically have both sandals again later, but at least they made an effort, unlike episode 8. Oh, the gas is caused by a baby dragon, technically mean there's a dragon's lair and a dragon's lair, and Jack gets farted out the back door. Personally, I recommend skipping the first half and going straight to the dragon part, because that's where the true humor and visuals shine through, better than Disney's Strange World at least. Alright, I'm gonna get pushback for this, but episode 22 so far is the weakest of the series. A coup hires a cat-like hunter race to hunt down and capture Jack, and that's your plot. To find Jack, they bring him down and they're disappointed he wasn't much of a challenge until they mention they're bringing him to a coup, where Jack frees himself and runs off, so I guess Jack is fine with being captured as long as it's not by a coup. Besides that, I'm legitimately trying to come up with anything to say about this episode. You know what happens? Jack runs somewhere and the hunters are right behind him. Jack runs somewhere, the hunters are right behind him. Repeat that for about 15 minutes and that's the episode. I guess it's interesting how they initially take him down like they demonstrated they do with most prey, which ends up failing, but they don't really try any other tactics afterwards. It's just running after him and eventually leaping after him. At least when half the episode is a battle scene, it's over the top and creatively brutal. This is just watching aliens chase Jack through not very interesting locations. And why are there 4 of them? They're all the same model with only their pants colors setting them apart. There could only be one and it would make the same difference. I do like this scene where Jack steals someone's rocket bike and doesn't know how to ride it, and this elevator sequence is a little funny, and how they eventually take Jack down is clever, using his own skill against him, but in the end they find they can't turn Jack over since he's the best hunt of their lives and they might want to do it again sometime. Now I can't call this one bad. I've yet to find an episode of this show I genuinely don't like, but for now it's the most forgettable I've seen. I've watched a good chunk of this show when I was younger and I forgot I even saw this one. Just skip it, you'll miss nothing, and I also wouldn't want to help a boss who just vaporized my lunch. Episode 23 introduces another fan favorite character. Desperate to destroy Jack, Aku sends his strongest minion Damongo, who has the power to capture other warriors and use their essence to recreate them as his own army. It's no wonder why Damongo has made such an impact on fans. His design, while simple, really stands out, seemingly solid and gaseous at the same time, with some of the best color balance of any character I've seen, completed by a raspy high-pitched voice that teeters the line between being creepy and annoying, but it's a different take for Kenneth Michael Richardson, who already does at least half the voices in the show, and the fact he can just summon an infinite number of warriors to do his bidding is scary and clearly one of the biggest threats Jack has ever faced. But despite Damongo, there's not much else to comment on. This is another episode that's an excuse to show fighting for fighting's sake, like episode 8 or 16. And while it's exciting, it's all we get, Jack fighting the same warriors over and over while Damongo stands off to the side and cackles. It does start to get old, and since Jack mentions he knows a few of these warriors, it's a missed opportunity to bring back friends and foes he previously met, instead of these unknowns we'll never see again. Also, major error showing the size of his canvas for the shaking effect, and Damongo is defeated by Jack grabbing onto a defeated warrior's smoke trail, which leads him inside Damongo so he can free all imprisoned warriors, because I guess that's how logic works in this episode. Though I kinda like it because it reminds me of out-of-bounds exploring in video games. And he's seemingly finished off by a coup, but due to fan popularity, he does show up in a few other related projects, including a cameo later. Overall, this isn't a great episode, but it is worth watching just for Damongo, and George Takei has a cameo somewhere, so that's cool. Episode 24 is another very different one. After a messy battle with the swamp slug, Jack takes a minute to wash the mud off, but his clothes and sword are stolen by a white rabbit who leads him down a rabbit hole and into, for all intents and purposes, Wonderland. Now, while the world is obviously inspired by Wonderland, it's not an adaptation. The weirdness is all its own, with only the occasional nod to the classic story. But it's such a creative, surreal world, it stands on its own. There's a perfect mix of strange yet recognizable visuals that give an idea of how this society works, and it's fun watching Jack trying to process everything, as well as the situations he keeps getting into. The rabbit stole his clothing, so he first has to sneak around naked, with some creative censorship I absolutely love, and once he finds clothing, is mistaken for a little cat burglar and has to flee an angry mob. But why doesn't he just drop the bag if that's why they're after him? And that's most of the runtime. He finds a new outfit to change into, only for that outfit to lead to more trouble. Like episode 22, it's basically one long chase sequence, but so much funnier and more interesting. Like the Scooby-Doo style door chase that I always love when I see it, and while I've said previous sequences have reminded me of video games, this one straight up references the old arcade game Centipede. Strangely, the weirdest part isn't even the visuals, but the lo-fi guitar backing that sounds ripped from a silent cartoon, which is that's what they're going for. I wish there wasn't so much talking. This is actually one of the most dialogue-heavy episodes of the show, but it's all unnecessary as the visuals already do a great job telling the story, and it's that element that keeps me from calling this episode great. Oh, and Jack finds the rabbit, who is actually a girl that wanted to sell his sword, so he gives her something else and heads off. So while I like the fairy tale or even the dragon episodes better, this is a fun surreal trip that's a break from how combat-heavy most of the show is, and a better modern-day Wonderland than other versions I've seen. Episode 25 is another experimental one. Jack comes across a Spartan-inspired culture who are frequently attacked by legions of robotic bulls sent by a rogue AI. With less and less hope of survival every day, Jack reveals a secret passage that could finally turn the tides in the Spartans' favor. This is obviously based on the legend of the 300 Spartans. In fact, the king even references it in flashback. What makes this episode unique is just how theatrical it feels. After the first 2 minutes, the remaining runtime is all presented in widescreen, more than any other episode is used to this point, allowing for very theatrical wide shots of large clashing armies across sprawling landscapes. There's such a scope to everything that isn't present in most episodes, allowing for so much more to be seen, including possibly the largest army since the 3-part pilot arc. Okay, they're still working with a TV budget, so there's still many shortcuts, but look at this cliff climb, or this phalanx formation, or this tracking shot of the Spartan army. Even if they didn't have much, they knew what to do what they had, kind of like the original legend. Now, besides style, there's not much to comment on. It's just one big battle. One that Jack surprisingly has little part in, as most of it is watching these armies using primitive yet technologically advanced weapons take down waves of metallic bull soldiers. But Jack does pop in every now and then to remind us he's awesome, especially towards the end, where Jack and the king infiltrate the main base and fight the rogue AI, which is this spider robot thing. And Jack doesn't even get in the final blow, leaving that to the king, who's the first person he's ever trusted with his sword, and boy, what a blow it is. I don't know if any episodes are shown in theaters, but guy, do I wish I could see this one on the big screen, better than Rise of an Empire at least. Episode 26 closes out season 2, and again in a unique way, Jack's sandals are demolished by a biker gang, and with them much of his combat skill. But after saving a shoe salesperson, he's given his choice of any shoes that suit him best, and it's on to see if contemporary pumps can outdo traditional footwear. I know a lot of people don't like this one, to the point it's usually considered one of, if not the worst episodes of the original series, but I feel it's deeper than most people give it credit. It shows just how balanced Jack's attire is, how everything is exactly how he needs it to be to fight the forces of evil, and how losing even one bit of that gear sets him back. Even if the shoes he tries are all much more modern with different builds and abilities, it all comes down to the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is funny that they address the importance of Jack's shoes, even though, as we've seen, his outfit is constantly getting ruined and is restored by the next episode or even the next scene, but it's worth it to watch Jack try all the shoes and fail for various reasons, including some that really haven't aged well. Okay, it gets a little more slapsticky than most episodes resort to, but not distractingly so, and eventually Jack does find replacement shoes when he's invited to dinner by a traditionalist Japanese family, who all, of course, also wear wooden sandals, and we get a nice scene of how the sandals traditionally called Gedo are made, which goes nicely with an earlier scene showing how Jack learned to make the straw hats called Sugagasa he's usually seen with, at Jack and the father exchange, showing their respect for their tradition. So while there's not that much to this episode, and technically you could skip it and miss nothing, I think what they give us is entertaining enough, and a good lesson that some old ways stick around for a good reason. That said, I think Jack should have stuck with the spiked heels. Screw the haters, he's Samurai Jack, all his fans will be wearing them in the week. Episode 27 starts off season 3 with another really fun one. Jack bumps into a grumpy wizard, and in response is turned into a chicken. He's then captured by a greedy Italian man who enters him into underground prize fighting, which, being Jack, he of course excels in. First and most obviously, Chicken Jack is adorable. Just translating Jack's expressions and fighting poses for Rooster is hilarious, especially as his bird instincts start taking over. Seriously, with all the vinyl figures of Samurai Jack, why hasn't Chicken Jack on one? Most of the episode is a fight scene, but again, such a glorious one. These are some of the most creative visuals across the entire show, and again show just how skilled a fighter Jack is. This is the first time he's completely unable to use his sword, but that doesn't slow him down a bit, and he adapts to his new body unbelievably quickly, while using his brain just as much as his muscles. I love how many levels there are to this beginning beetle fight, and how non-brutally brutal the takedowns are. Even with the fighters being robots, I don't think a show for kids could get away with this today. What's just as much fun as the fight scenes are the backgrounds. I get the impression the censors wouldn't let them show even slightly suggestive ads to represent the sleazer part of town, so they went the opposite direction. That's some Alex Hirsch levels of passive aggression right there. And is it just me, or are the background characters getting sillier? This one is literally a Sabian Christmas tree. After Jack wins multiple fights, his owner is invited into the big leagues, and you think this is going to be the rest of, or even the next episode. But in a clever subversion, the guy runs into the wizard, who turns him into a chicken, and inadvertently reverts Jack back to normal. That might have disappointed some viewers, but I love it. If you like the Gladiator episode from the last season, but want to see it done with a chicken and 10 times funnier, this is for you. Better than the Dexter's lab take, anyway. Episode 28 is another well-known episode. Jack enters a medieval village while the children have disappeared, and it's revealed they've all been brainwashed by a DJ minion of a coup, who uses rave music to mind control them into committing crimes. So Jack must, yes, stop this music that is corrupting the youth. The way I described it, it sounds like some outdated fear-mongering PSA preaching against the terrors of techno. Jack even straight up calls it evil music. And yeah, it could be seen that way, but I don't think it was the intention. I mean, just look at these visuals. Look how colorful and appealing this rave looks, and how much effort was put into the dancer's animation. Even Jack gets a bust move at one point, while wearing the funniest outfit he'll ever wear in the show. Again, why is there no vinyl figure of that? And the music is goated. Seriously, this joins the techno beat from episode 6 as some of the best background music I've ever heard. Yeah, for an episode allegedly decrying rave culture, I've never seen it look more appealing. It's even better that aliens exist in this world so they can get creative with both the outfits and the species, including the cellophane girl. And once Jack discovers the source of the brainwashing, well, we get more great action, where anything can be a weapon, even the DJ's gold tooth. And for someone trying to save these kids, I don't think this group survived the night, but it comes to a head where the DJ uses his audio equipment to create a mech suit, and the visuals suddenly change from a colorful wave to fighting in the mud, showing how dirty this fight actually is with the glamour taken away. And of course, Jack defeats the evil music and the kids go home. Yeah, try that with actual ravers and see just how even more out of control things get. Still another great episode that's light on substance, but heavy on impressive visuals, and made a great flash game back in the day. Episode 29 is one I don't see talked about that often. Jack boards a train in an Old West setting, not knowing he's being tracked by 2 bounty hunters, or that they're a recently divorced couple who might kill each other before they do him. I freaking love Weird West settings. I really love the concept of civilization trying to adapt to the untamed and unexplored wilderness while incorporating futuristic technology. It's why Firefly was so good. And that and this are some of the best examples I've ever seen. I love how Jack is on an old tiny steam train, but one of the bounty hunters has mechanical interchangeable hands and uses a car to catch up with the train. I don't care if it makes no sense, it's awesome. Though I'm a little disappointed this guy has literal finger guns and yet he doesn't go pew pew pew. The best part is probably their verbal showdown meeting, where Jack and the bounty hunter basically have a yo mama off and fleeing each other's insults back in their faces. Also, where Jack uses his dexterity to literally roll the hunter right off the train. The chemistry between the bounty hunters is also great, how they hate each other yet also realize they need each other if they're going to take down Jack. And even though they're separated, they still work great as a team, actually giving Jack a challenge, and I'm glad his code doesn't include that he can't hit a woman. Though they do mention actual American locations and shout that the South shall rise again, so I guess even under a coup's rule, America and the Civil War still happened. I don't know, it's not worth the headspace. Their fight does reignite a sense of camaraderie, and when they capture Jack, it looks like they're gonna get together again, only for one of them to get greedy, which leads to Jack getting away. So what's not often brought up when talking about the show's greatest, I really do enjoy this episode and its aesthetics. Also, cute cameo from Quick Draw McGraw. Episode 30 is a great episode, but it takes a while to get there. Jack stumbles across the graveyard, and Aku, deciding to take a more proactive role, raises the dead for Jack to fight. That's most of the first half, and honestly, it's kind of boring. You'd think Jack vs. Zombies would be awesome, but it's surprisingly not. The show has shown its strength in simple shapes and colors, but the undead are too simply drawn, with too few details. And most of the fight is in the dark with various shades of blacks, browns, and grays, and it's all unappealing to look at. Even the fighting isn't that exciting. It's just Jack slashing at skeletons that just disappear in puffs of smoke. Weirdly, for a show that's excelled in showing intense body violence without actually showing bodies, Jack fighting actual corpses might be the least violent fight in the show. That said, there are a couple things I like. The shots of Grumpy Aku at the start are so much fun, like he's watching a bad movie and just wants to see how it ends. And this domino kill shot is pretty cool, and some imagery is creatively creepy. I can see younger kids being scared by some of these monsters, but it actually gets good when Aku shows up and manages to steal Jack's sword, which he intends to use on Jack, and we get a good sequence of Jack trying to escape Aku, again showing just how inhumanly amazing his acrobatics are. While we get more of Aku's never-boring shapeshifting, including a dragon. But it all comes to a head when Aku has Jack pinned, he brings the sword down to end Jack, and it does nothing, as the sword is forged in righteousness, therefore it cannot be used by evil. Holy crap, the tension, the expression work, and the revelation, plus this visual of Aku being shredded, all culminate in one of, if not the, greatest endings across the show. Personally, I recommend just skipping to when Aku gets the sword and watching from there. The first half might be DOA, but the second is one of the most lively the show gives us. Episode 31 is sadly another of the series' weakest. Jack comes across the ruins of the Egyptian city where he studied as a child, only to find Aku has awoken the imprisoned minions of Set, who, well, set upon Jack, and his only hope is to find the golden scarab beetle. This is another one that sadly gives me little to work with. It's just one big fight scene between Jack and the minions, all set against some pretty drab ruins. The beginning flashback where we see Jack as a child, I guess, is interesting, but it goes on forever and could have been cut. Jack could have just happened across the hieroglyphs to tell him how to defeat the minions, which honestly do have a pretty cool design. I love how they look and act like jackals, including running on all fours for a speed boost, and I like how fast and relentlessly they attack. When Jack discovers them and throw a dozen punches before he even feels the first, and you feel Jack's confusion of what exactly is going on. But like with episode 22, there's no reason for there to be 3 of them. They're all the same model with basically the same weapon, so having just one would have made the same amount of difference. The rest of the episode is Jack looking for the scarab that will summon the god Horus, finding each part in a section of ruins that provides a clue to the next. Which, given just how powerful these things are, I don't think splitting up the key to destroying them and hiding each part across a large temple where no regular person could reach them was the wisest of choices. But it does give a very video game-like feel where Jack has to figure out the clues to the next location, all while being pursued by invincible monsters. And when he summons the god, yeah, this dissolve effect is pretty cool. Again, I don't hate this episode, and it is slightly better than episode 22, it just doesn't give me enough to remember. You can skip it and miss nothing, except this cameo from the original Master Splinter. Episode 32 is one of the most important in the entire show. Jack is guided to an island where he can find a time portal, but only one may use it, one who can prove they're unquestionably worthy. Before he even gets to the portal, Jack's journey is an interesting one. He tries to cross the lake to the island, but it's a magical lake that sucks him down to the bottom, and he has to hitch a ride with an impossibly long-legged creature. And from there, the creature leads him to another creature, and that one to another, each with their own tests if Jack has the skills for the final confrontation to even bother with him. Needless to say, the creature designs are really fun and inventive, and the voices they give them are pretty cool too. And after many trials, Jack reaches the being that stands between him and the time portal, the Guardian simply known as the Guardian. It's not hard to see how this guy's a fan favorite. Like the Mongo, his design is simple, yet really stands out, especially with those tiny red glasses against solid shades of blue and black. And he's also voiced by Kenneth Michael Richardson, putting on the tough guy voice he likes to use for more urban characters. But the biggest standout is just how OP he is. He's practically taken down every other being that's ever tried to use the portal, and he proves it, showing even more advanced skill in every weapon class than even Jack, who throughout the battle is trying more to survive than fight back. And you can tell both the voice actor and the character are enjoying every minute of this. There's so much weight behind each attack, showing that both fighters are giving their all. But despite Jack getting further than anyone ever has, even his best is not enough. But in the show's most famous image, the Guardian lets him walk away, and it's shown Jack will one day be strong enough to use the portal. So while the episode is mostly one big fight scene, it's an impactful one, and did give a hint as to how Jack's journey will eventually end. And oh boy, was the result a spit in the face! Episode 33 is the first I can influentially call bad. Jack encounters a Totoro-looking character who relentlessly follows him, and that's the plot. Needless to say, I hate this thing. First of all, it's in that design I think has been mathematically proven to be eye candy to young children. A round shape with a wide smile and pronounced butt. Well done, you've made the minions before the minions. Somewhere a 5-year-old is laughing. Second, it's so annoying! There's a way to make cute or irritating work, but that's not here. The creature just makes repetitive noises or big expressions like a little kid demanding attention, and it gets old and fast. Which wouldn't be too bad, except it's also constantly proving a hindrance to Jack. At one point, Jack thanks us for all his help, where all we're shown is it just getting in his way and ruining his life. Which it then majorly does by destroying the crystal that could have sent Jack home. I'm sorry, why are we not supposed to want Jack to gut this thing? Even the other aspects feel lacking. This is one of the most awkward frontal walking shots I've ever seen. And Jack's unnecessary dialogue is made even more awkward by how overly written it is, like Shyamalan decided to guest write. And keeping with the tone they're trying for, the background music is that saccharine cutesy score you hear from Disney Jr. that further grates on my nerves. Thankfully, the episode finally gets good when Jack abandons the creature and runs into a gang of robot greasers. We finally get some fun action, and the creature finally proves itself, as when Jack is about finished, it shows it can turn into a ferocious beast, which makes short work of the gang, then turns back. And we get one final scene of annoyance before the episode mercifully ends. I don't know why we got this. Did the kid of one of the producers have a script and Genndy had to use it to risk cancellation? I don't know, but if you're gonna see this, skip to the final fight and watch nothing else. And someone released a clean rip of Wild Ride already. Episode 34 is the first I haven't seen before now, where Hermit tells Jack of 3 gems that when combined will give him power over time. Thus the duo set out to retrieve the gems for Aku, I mean the Hermit. Yeah, I mean seriously. In episode 6 he was actually subtle with his disguise, but here a cave worm could tell that's Aku. Thankfully this episode doesn't treat its audience like they're stupid, and it's confirmed early on that it is actually Aku as he leads Jack around the world to find the gems. In a rarity for the show, Jack doesn't require his sword for the tasks, as each is guarded by puzzle traps. One floods the temple, one requires very precise gliding maneuvers, and one threatens to cook anyone inside the glass dome. So there are no enemies and Jack has to use his head for each one, and how he solves each is ingenious, like plugging up a water spout so the built-up pressure shoots him back through the temple before it sinks. And this gliding looks fun, though I'm pretty sure that's not how airlift works. Again, this all feels like a video game. Heck, with its swimming, gliding, and laser puzzles, I get major Zelda vibes from this. And to further show just how smart Jack is, he reveals he figured out it was Aku from the start, so he sabotages the ritual to resurrect the god warrior meant to destroy Jack, and the rest is Jack fighting Aku. In sadly the most underwhelming Jack Aku battle we've had so far. It's not bad, it just lacks the scope and build-up of the previous fights, especially the one 4 episodes ago. And do the gems actually contain intense magic? Because if so, why didn't Jack hang on to them? When I was younger, my DVD stopped working right at this episode, and I never got around to getting a new one, so most of seasons 3 and 4 I'm seeing for the first time, and for a first viewing, I rate this one as okay, but nothing special. Though worth it to hear Aku try to disguise his voice. Episode 35 might be the darkest of the original series, when Jack follows follows a young girl trying to return her stuffed bear. He enters a seemingly abandoned Japanese mansion where the rooms tell a tragic story of the previous inhabitants. And when Jack tries to leave, he finds his story may also be at an end. Something obvious right off the bat is just how much higher the art quality is. Unlike much of the series, every element is very detailed, drawing attention away from Jack as he also doesn't know what to focus on. Anything can happen in this house, as Jack learns while chasing shadows and seeing weird random flashbacks about the family who lived here. With the modern popularity of analog horror, this has lost a lot of its impact, but for the time, I imagine this is some of the most unnerving animation ever created for Western audiences. Of course, in trope fashion, he's eventually annoyed and tries to leave, only to find the house has trapped him in. He finds the girl again, and amazingly her family, and everything seems fine. But the illusion is shattered, and we get, well, something I'm surprised was allowed to air during regular programming. Seriously, I'd love to be a 10-year-old watching this with no idea what's going to happen, and it's revealed to be an evil Oni who has trapped the souls of the family, and yes, even Jack's. And most of the rest is presented in this glorious ink painting style, very reminiscent of older Japanese animation. But even the afterlife can't contain Jack as he uses his sword to battle and destroy the demon. I can only imagine how difficult it was to animate all this, and how hard they worked to match the style of movement from the media they were inspired by, and how mind-blowing this was to young audiences whose only exposure to anime was likely Pokemon. But Jack frees himself and even the family, so happy end. Do I need to say this is top 5 good? Because this is top 5 good, though minus 5 points for reminding me of episode 33. Episode 36 is another one where Jack technically screws himself over. Jack happens across the order of Shaolin monks he once trained with, whose current Grand Master was even alive during Jack's stay, but has developed such chi as to be effectively immortal. He's totaled the portal that activates exactly at noon, and he and 2 students go to find it. While most episodes are here to show off how awesome Jack is, this feels here to show off how cool martial arts in general are. Most of the episode is just Jack and the monks performing different kung fu moves, giving names to each one. I'm not trained in this discipline, so I can't tell if they're accurate, but they do look cool, and I like how they're hidden from a coup and the screen is just static. Once we finally break away from the training and follow their journey, I don't have much to comment on. Their trip has some beautiful scenery and is very atmospheric, and I like how they present this round building in traditional animation, which is very hard to do. I don't know if they use CG for the shot, but either way, it looks great. Then there's a surprisingly long sequence where everything goes completely silent as Jack and the monks try to find what's making the birds nervous, followed by an attack by the Terracotta Guardians. It's a good fight scene, nothing to add, but then we get to the frustrating part. Jack stands before the time portal, ready to go back to his time, and he abandons it to help his companions. Even though, like episode 5, if he had gone through the portal and fought a coup, he could have stopped all this from happening. Then he destroys the portal for no reason. Their escape route was right there. I just don't get this logic, and if I was willing to risk my life to guard the last hope for the world and they give it up just to come back and save me, I think I want to kill the guy myself. And it's for that reason and how little happens in this episode that I can't recommend this one. Skip it and go watch Zhaolin's Showdown instead. Birth of Evil is the show's first two-parter and serves as a prequel. A cloud of evil appears in the universe and the gods destroy it, but not before Shard escapes and eventually collides with Earth, killing the dinosaurs. It spreads over millions of years, absorbing anything it touches until finally a samurai uses an elixir to attack it at the source, but instead of destroying it, it frees a coup, who then begins to wreak havoc on the world. Though the gods give the samurai a magic sword that imprisons a coup again and sets the stage for the start of the series. Did you notice how quickly I summed all that up? Yeah, for a story that insists it has to take twice as long, it feels like less happens in a single episode. Now, as always, the visuals and animation are very high quality, but surprisingly subpar for this show. The propensity for slow atmospheric shots is actually to its detriment here, as everything feels lengthened just to fill a double-length runtime. Heck, even the long sequence of a coup stretching feels stretched out. And little catches my attention. Most visuals don't add anything or make this set more enjoyable, except for the samurai riding a cloud, while the coup pulls some cool shapeshifting. I guess the scope as the samurai fights off an entire legion of the coup warriors is impressive, including some slow-motion panning shots, but besides that, I was honestly bored watching these 40 minutes. And if this bored me as an adult, I dread to know how I'd feel as a 10-year-old watching this on TV with commercials. What does any of this add? We don't learn anything new. Nothing's revealed that changes the show's tone or adds more importance behind Jack's quest. It's everything we already learned in the first few episodes and what the opening constantly reminds us of. So if you can't tell, I didn't like these episodes and I consider them some of the weakest. Not the worst, just not worth your time. Also, I don't want to be Jack's dad when Goku finds out he ruins his cloud. Episode 39 closes out season 3 and thankfully with a fun one. Jack is told of a jewel guarded in a pyramid that will send him through time, but at the same time Jack is breaking in, so is this white-suited thief, and it's a race to see who has the skill to get to the gem first. While a lot of episodes have paid tribute to other media, this is straight up an homage to Lupin the Third. Seriously, this guy looks like if Gigan took a bath in bleach, with a personality like Lupin himself. Add to that this is a heist plot, complete with guards, booby traps, and puzzle rooms, and this is where the fun truly lies. The best part is seeing both characters tackle each obstacle in their own way, with Jack using his heightened senses and physical skills, while the unnamed thief uses a wide array of technology, but they both possess unique skills that are needed to help each other get the jewel. Though once they reach it, the thief won't give it up, and that triggers an argument in the pyramid's defenses, so they have to work together to escape while finding over the jewel. Like Jack and the Scotsman, their personalities are a great contrast, with Jack being a serious and duty-bound warrior, while the other guy's a slick, casual thief, with Jack dressed as a ninja for even more contrast, as giving the thief a black suit probably would have triggered a legal dispute. But they still work together when they're not squabbling, and we get some Lupin-flavored action comedy, including ducking into an out-of-nowhere janitor's closet, because hey, gotta fit that cliche in somewhere. And just when it looks like the thief has left Jack for dead, with some impressive still shots, he proves himself a man of honor, and they both get out of there. But the ensuing struggle results in the jewel shattering. This is much better than the last few episodes, and the best of the season finales. And yes, the thief does pop up again in the comics. Episode 40 starts off season 4. Aku has trained a robotic ninja to destroy Jack, and as it stalks Jack to learn his strengths and weaknesses, this could be Jack's final hour. The opening could have been one of the greatest, where we see the ninja stalk and slice Jack in half. The problem is that it's revealed too quickly that Jack is a training robot. If we got a silhouette of Jack being sliced in half and then it panned down to reveal it's a fake, this could have been one hell of a fake out. We then see the ninja stalking the real Jack in an also pretty suspenseful sequence where he almost gets his chance, but Jack having to save a village from robot shellfish gets in the way. The following fight is pretty standard, but we get to see the ninja watch Jack, and it almost gives the impression it's being impressed by Jack's strength and loyalty and will end up siding with Jack instead of destroying him. But no, it was just studying him to learn his weakness, which it finds as it abducts a small child, forcing him to go after it. Again, the fighting's pretty par, though these few seconds are freaking amazing, but impressive that it's another sequence where it's almost dead silent, with only the sound of Jack's shoes and the creaking of the tower hiding how sneaky the ninja is. But once Jack realizes his strength is the darkness, he counters it with his strength of light, and we get one of the best sequences in the entire show, where the characters become flat shapes of almost complete white and black. This is minimalism at its most minimalist, and one of the most artistic and cleverly drawn fight scenes of the series, with the shapes blending into the surrounding lighter darkness and the setting sun forcing Jack to constantly change hiding places. It is the very definition of beauty and simplicity, and of course Jack is victorious. While most of the episode is nothing special, I insist you watch this end battle at least once. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm craving some lobster. Episode 41 is something I'm surprised you haven't gotten until now. Jack wanders into the ruins of a modern city, where he somehow ambushed by an enormous robot that makes quick work of him. He's saved by the survivors of the city, who explain it was originally a protector android that went rogue and destroyed everything, but luckily they have another one on standby that just so happens to be shaped like a giant samurai and is only compatible with Jack. Thus, it's giant robot versus giant robot. With how the show is set in the future and how many ruined villages Jack has encountered, I'm surprised it's taken this long to see the ruins of a modern city. And I dig the post-apocalyptic atmosphere of the destroyed buildings with smoke still billowing and traffic lights still flashing, suggesting the destruction was very recent. And this water swing Jack performs puts Tarzan to shame. I also like this professor droid and how he has that cliche digital voice filter used to show how unfeeling robots are, but the actor puts a lot of emotion behind the performance and it overpowers the monotone and creates something unique. And once we get to the giant robot fight, that's pretty good too. Most of it is comprised of the protector firing everything it's got at Jack, with my favorite part being these falling bullet shells as big as cars that crush everything below, while the Jack robot stands there without a scratch. Thus it must be resolved with a good old-fashioned brawl to the death. The action is not as fast as a typical Jack fight, but the impact is, well, impactful. You really feel the weight of these giant robots and the massive destruction these attacks cause, especially when the protector leaps from space to shatter their swords. And just when Jack seems victorious, these worm things come out of the droid and nearly tear Jack apart, but Jack is just too awesome. And of course it has to end with the return to the sea. While it's slower than most episodes, it's just visually interesting enough to recommend it. Better than Atlantic Rim anyway. Episode 42 comes very close to being bad. Jack and other guests in an inn are bullied by a loud enough poser warrior calling himself Da Samurai, who grows jealous of Jack and demands they fight to show who's best. Jack reluctantly agrees, but his attention is eventually drawn to an actual threat. Needless to say, the other samurai is unbearable. I know he's an obnoxious bully who needs to be put in his place, but God, he's annoying. Every time he opens his mouth, I want to punch right through my screen. There's an art to annoying characters, and this one failed that class. I don't want to see this guy humbled. I just want to turn it off and spare the headache. And I'm a white guy, so I have no right to determine if this is or isn't a racist portrayal, but it is a product of its time and very, very cringe. That said, there are a couple things that save this episode. The first is, of course, the other samurai getting the humiliation of his life, constantly charging at Jack only to be effortlessly beaten back as he loses every piece of his gear, all while Jack doesn't even break a sweat. While probably feeling how the Guardian felt during their fight, and this fake out had me burst out laughing. And the second is the fight against the assassins. I was originally going to complain they're literally just robotic sticks and again ask if they were running out of designs, but later they appear and suddenly have the faces of what look like evil handsome Squidward. And we get a genuinely brutal fight, which we haven't really seen since episode 27. I don't know, maybe the censors finally ordered them to tone it down, and just when it looks like they're defeated, they reform into this H.R. Geiger nightmare that the other samurai even saves Jack from, putting his ego on hold, and when Jack defeats that, the other guy basically becomes the adoring fan from Oblivion. This episode has good traits, but I still can't recommend it since the first half isn't worth sitting through to get to those scenes, and it's a total waste of David Allen Greer. Episode 43 is surprisingly one of the scarier ones. Aku has a cold, yeah, I guess even demonic overlords can get sick, and while fighting Jack spits up a drop of phlegm, which Jack swallows, and as he travels to the next town, finds himself feeling more and more unwell. Now you're probably asking, what's scary about that? It sounds like your typical sick day episode that every show does at some point. Well, what I didn't mention is that the phlegm is slowly turning Jack into Aku. Yeah, this is also a possession episode, as Aku's essence works his way through Jack and slowly converts him into the god of chaos. And it's all Jack can do to retain any semblance of himself, finding himself stealing jewels, threatening to drop mountain climbers, and tearing pants as his physical and mental forms morph into Aku. And you know how I said I felt the show had been getting less brutal since last season? Yeah, there's a scene with this robot I'm not showing, but it's pure nightmare fuel. And I'm pretty sure most of these lizard people won't be seeing tomorrow. For a kid watching this, not yet grasping the heroes always win mindset of these kinds of shows and not knowing there were more episodes, it must have been terrifying seeing their hero become this monster, possibly forever. After the nearly fully converted Jack destroys another time portal, the Guardian Monk only barely manages to knock him out. Thus, Jack must have a mental battle with Aku or lose himself forever. So to balance out the horror, we get the spiritual struggle within Jack, which almost looks like a living coloring book. It's simple yet effective, as Jack is reminded of all the good he's done and finds the strength to overcome the infection and cure himself. I don't see this episode brought up often, but wow, this is easily one of my favorites and a definite watch. Also, the show's featured a lot of different accents, but Jewish mountain climbers are a new one. Episode 44 is possibly the one that aged the worst. A group of bounty hunters meet up to discuss how to take down Jack, and yeah, the show's no stranger to stereotypes, and normally I don't really care, but a couple of these designs are, honestly, I'm a little surprised they got away with them even back then. Questionable caricatures aside, the stories they tell of how they'll get Jack are very creative, each one presented to the style of the region they represent, except for the Russian guy who's done it in a children's drawing. What, no reference to Cheburashka? Yeah, I digress. But each one is shot down by a mysterious masked figure who points out how Jack will counter them. I thought the gag would be it was Jack trying to dishearten them or mislead everyone into a plan that would get him out of his way, but no, it's a princess who wants to trade Jack for her people's freedom and promises everyone a large bounty if they'll help her. Her plan is ultimately a mixture of all their plans, which they set up and wait for Jack, and wait. Yeah, the second half starts to overstay its welcome. I get what they're going for, trying to get the audience to feel the same tension and even boredom the bounty hunters are experiencing, but it goes for so long it starts to lose my attention. No joke, the time for the princess revealing her plan to them springing it is 6 minutes, with minimal talking or even movement. And if it started to bore me, an adult, I pity the young target audience. Thankfully, the payoff is mostly worth it. As Jack shows up, the trap is sprung, and they horribly underestimate how awesome Jack is, taking everyone down with his awesome sketchy filter. This episode is really good, and another standout of the show. You just need to be in the right mindset to enjoy it, and be able to look past a few dubious depictions. Episodes 45 and 46 are the second two-parter of the series. The Scotsman makes a long-awaited third showing as a boat passenger who served a drink by none other than Jack, except he speaks like a surfer dude and insists his name is Brent. Thus, Scotsman drags him across the world, trying to fight what blanked out the samurai's memory. While I didn't like the first two-parter, I'm pleased to say I had the time of my life watching this. First of all, it's another Scotsman appearance who's always a delight to watch, and I love how he's so dedicated to his friend that he'll go through anything to help him, which, seeing as how they're both wanted men, means a lot of fighting. And second, this is the funniest episode of the entire series. Comedy isn't this show's focus, but I was laughing my head off watching these two. I love the voices they give Jack in this creature. I love how he stuffs Jack into his sword holster to protect him, and well, the Scotsman is a funny guy in general, easily putting anyone in a good mood. Eventually, the duo will find themselves on an island where a trio of sirens brainwash everyone, except the Scotsman, who's completely tone deaf. And I really like their song, sounding like if Enya was evil. It's revealed they were the ones who wiped Jack's memory and took his sword, since he was so resistant to their charms, which, wow, are some of the most Y7FB charms I've ever seen. I was starting to think this was a case where Brent was just mistaken for Jack and they'd find the real one, and I'm very glad that didn't happen, because I hate those plots. Scotsman frees everyone with his bagpipes, and Jack regains his memory and finishes the sirens off. But the episode's not done, as we then get a long competition between the two over who will row the boat back, as if they knew this would be their final appearance in the show and wanted to make the most of it. Even if it's easy to sum up, this is a fantastic watch you need to sit through yourself to fully appreciate, though I don't get the constant allusions to Star Wars in the first part. Episode 47 is the laziest of the show, and except Prince and Princess crash on Earth while trying to save their planet and are taken by Aku, so Jack must save them and help them back to their ship. You know how I said last episode I didn't get the point of the Star Wars referencing? Yeah, that's half this episode. A good chunk of the dialogue and designs are lifted straight from Star Wars, sometimes word for word. For no reason, as most of this has nothing to do with Star Wars. It's to help the aliens get home plot, and a really weak one. The first 7 minutes are dedicated to showing us their planet and how it's being invaded by a long dormant army, but nothing is developed enough to make me care. It's just filler. It could have started with the two crashing to Earth and it would have made as much difference. Heck, as I brought up, there's no reason for there to be two of them. They have no individual personalities or skills, so he could have just had one. And when they're explaining their plight to Aku, Jack has flashbacks to his own life, as if he wouldn't have already felt a duty to save them. In fact, I thought one of Jack's major problems was Aku was hard to get to, yet he infiltrates his tower without breaking a sweat. We also get a few jokes about how Jack doesn't understand technology, which, come on, it's been years. He has to at least know the concepts by this point. There are a lot of animation errors in this, especially with visible frame edges, and I'm pretty sure some of the footage with the Beatles is lifted directly from episode 3. I do like a couple of the moves he pulls, and the Sand Gravity fight is fun, but I don't feel like a thing is accomplished, especially when they get back to their planet and everything's instantly resolved. Yeah, this is the original series worst episode. 33 was annoying, but had a great final act. This feels like they had to make a quota, but had very little time or money by this point. And except for very rare cases, referencing Star Wars is an admission you're out of ideas. Episode 48 is one I don't know what to do with. Aku is tired of failure, so he decides to do things himself. Thus, he challenges Jack to a duel where he can't shapeshift and Jack can't use his sword. Jack agrees, and the two spar like Greek wrestlers. So what exactly were the conditions for victory? For Aku to kill Jack, I guess, but how is Jack supposed to win? Aku's in human form, but that doesn't mean he's human or mortal. He has nothing to break, nothing to damage, and as established multiple times, can't be hurt by anything but the sword. Jack could drop kick him for the rest of the week, and all he do is wear himself out. Heck, I don't know why Aku's feeling pain or why he doesn't just let Jack punch him, then trap his hand in his gunk and finish him off. Since Aku's not gaining anything by playing by the rules, of course it'll be fine. Jack also wasn't planning on winning fairly, so I guess it's a moot question. The fight itself is fine. I don't think we've had a one-on-one bare-knuckle brawl yet. Jack is almost always wielding some kind of weapon, so it is fun seeing him just as proficient with his hands and feet, and eventually graduating to staves. So there's nothing to be gained in this fight without his sword, so I don't have that much investment. What does keep me invested is the humor. This episode has some of the series' best jokes. Things like Aku ordering an assassin like a pizza or learning to stretch like a human are generally funny. But the best part is when Aku inevitably cheats, so Jack goes for his sword, only for Aku to grab it, only for it to be a fake, since Jack knew he was going to cheat and try to steal it. In fact, he made a million fakes for Aku to find, and Jack's smile as Aku's freaking out, followed by his smug walk, have rightly become memes. Of course, Jack has the real one and sends Aku packing. While the main focus is pretty weak, it's the humor that keeps you coming back. Also, Jack, dude, they can't be good for your neck. Episode 49 is the series' second anthology, with each story themed around a season. In summer, Jack journeys across an unforgiving desert when he's attacked by sand demons. He fights until it drops, only to find they're an illusion, and thankfully soon finds an oasis. In fall, a mad scientist taints a well with the powerful poison that Jack seemingly drinks from, but he tricks the scientist into drinking his own poison, killing him. In winter, an extremely powerful sword is forged over a great amount of time and skill, while a mighty warrior proves themselves worthy to wield it. But in their first and only confrontation, it's effortlessly destroyed by Jack. Finally, in spring, Jack stumbles across a peaceful valley watched over by a beautiful spirit who convinces him to rest. However, his duty compels him to leave, also escaping the binds of the evil spirit trying to keep him forever. This anthology is both better and worse than the previous. Nothing is as annoying as that one's first and even a bit of its third segments, but nothing comes close to the horror and excitement of the previous second segment. Still, each segment of this gives me something to appreciate. I like that Jack finally catches a break in the first one. I like the tension of the second, wondering what it's all building up to and the horrifying revelation. And I think it's the strongest of the lot. I like what they used to forge the sword in the third, including using Sleeping Dragon's fire and pigs running on treadmills, only for it all to have been for nothing. And I like the visuals of the fourth, though I think it's the weakest. It's the most predictable and the only one that primarily uses dialogue, which takes me out of the experience the other sets up, and it just ends. This episode isn't essential, but still an okay passive watch, and the less to feature Aku's original actor. Episode 50 is the saddest of the series. One of Aku's robots, known as X-49, is implanted with an emotion chip, somehow making them a skilled assassin, but also making them regret their actions. Eventually, they adopt a dog and retire, but Aku kidnaps the dog and they're forced to go after Jack. This episode is clearly inspired by film noir. The heavy rain over a dark city, the soft jazz soundtrack, the monochrome flashbacks, the clothing styles, and of course X-49 narrating to the audience. And I do love film noir. It's something I don't think I'll ever get tired of. And I like we get more of Aku's past as well, showing he didn't feel he was conquering fast enough, so he hired scientists to build him robot armies, and we see their steady progression leading up to the X series and beyond. This is also one of the most mature episodes, showing realistic guns and casings and leaving it unambiguous that innocent people get killed. Heck, some scenes had to be last minute altered to comply with broadcast standards. But it's sweet that X-49 finds love after their team is destroyed in front of them in the form of a tiny dog they named Lulu. Though it's weird Aku's robot is allowed to retire and isn't simply retired. But then Aku hears of their skill and abducts Lulu, and the second half is X-49 hunting Jack through a factory. This part is mostly speechless but very noisy as the robot shoots anything that even looks like Jack, with the best part where they open a steam valve and droplets condense on their face, mimicking sweat. But unfortunately, Jack takes him down like just another of Aku's minions, and we never find out what happened to Lulu. Though it's my theory that Lulu died a while ago and X-49 couldn't accept it, as when they look at her photo, her eyes are open, but when we see it, they're closed. Or it's an animation error, I don't know. Either way, easily one of the best episodes and Aku's final original appearance. Episode 51 is the only flashback-centric one. We see a young Jack just starting his training being dropped off at the African village, where he's trained in the discipline of the staff. But he's about to be disciplined in a lot more than he expected. I don't know why they dedicated an entire episode to Jack's childhood, especially since we know how this ends, but it's still fun. It's nice to see an inexperienced Jack going through the motions that would lead him to becoming the greatest warrior while trying to recover from the still fresh tragedy of losing his parents. And while he's training, he's learning and making friends, including with the chief's son, who hates him and suddenly likes him, so I guess that cliche was quick, who introduces him to the animals of Africa. This leads to very nice environmental scenes, and if Jack finally having someone his age to confide in during these strenuous years, and studying animal behavior turns out to be crucial when the village is attacked by a tribe loyal to Aku looking for Jack. Which might be a continuity error. It's originally suggested Aku didn't even know Jack existed until he confronted him, but I guess that's up for debate. But he uses his knowledge in the rival tribe's Ebon sword to create his own disciplines to fight and save his tribe. I was ready to not like this fight, as this presents Jack still young and only just beginning his training as an overpowered godchild taking on full-grown warriors, but he does eventually find himself in over his head and has to save the other tribe members so they can save him. And the chieftain announces Jack's training there complete. This is another episode technically not needed, but still an entertaining sit. Unfortunately, it's one that also probably didn't age well, as even with how respectfully they're portrayed, this culture shown with these designs and traditions likely wouldn't be received well with today's sensitivities. But if you can look past that issue, this is still a nice watch and an indicator of things to come in Jack's life. Episode 52 closes out season 4. Jack saves a baby from hungry ogres and searches for its true mother. Yeah, it's a baby episode, which every series has to have, and is usually some of each show's worst. So in this case, this might be the best one I've ever seen. Jack quickly makes friends with the kid and uses his skills to keep him out of danger, and we get a nice montage of him trying to figure out where they came from, followed by Jack retelling the legend of Momotaro the Peach Boy with a cutesy but visually appealing art style. But it's the second half where things take a turn for the weird. We get Jack talking in cute baby talk and having to keep the kid from running off, involving a funny rabbit gag, and yes, a mercifully short diaper scene, but then the kid gets hungry, Jack has to find nourishment, and we get a long sequence of baby animals sucking and Jack milking teats. Yeah, the show's given us so many violent fights, yet it's here I start to feel like I shouldn't be watching this. Oh, but then we get the kid nearly dying of sickness and loneliness, and Jack having to fight off a flamboyant French robot bounty hunter, giving the kid their first glimpse of violence, which compounds as Jack encounters the ogres again, destroying each of them as the kid watches. So when they finally find the mother, the kid's innocence is completely destroyed, and Jack admits they're destined to become a warrior before sadly walking off. Holy crap, this episode's messed up. Oh, and that's the end of the original series, as it was abruptly cancelled in the midst of a restructuring at Cartoon Network. But wow, what a point to end on, and the only baby episode I would recommend. Much later we would finally get a proper finale, but there was a lot of other Jack-related media released before then, so let's take a look through that before we get to the long-awaited next season. As with much of Cartoon Network's lineup, Samurai Jack was referenced or made appearances in other media. Jack appears in another Tartakovsky project as an action figure in the Dexter's Laboratory episode Father Knows Least. He has a speaking role in the Once Upon a Toon segment of the Cartoon Network Mad series, though voiced by a different actor. He's seen fighting the corruption and Come and Live with Pibby, and also fought in the Jellystone crossover Crisis on Infinite Mirths, where he is voiced by his original actor. And he has a Hollywood Walk of Fame star in the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie. Aku is analyzed in the villainous episode The Lost Cases of the Future, also featuring a cameo from Demongo, and a tribute to Aku appears at the ending to the fan series Afro Samurai Champloo. Jack and Aku would also appear in the occasional Cartoon Network City bumper. That could sometimes be just as entertaining as the show itself, including Jack showing that his sweeping skills are just as good as his swordplay, Aku trying to get a discount with a totally legitimate student card, and most famously, Jack and Johnny Bravo conversing in a laundromat, where a dress left by Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls accidentally turns Jack's robe pink. Jack also made a very brief cameo in a bumper for Cartoon Network's 20th anniversary, and because I have nowhere else to mention it, there's the original teaser, where a slightly different model Jack fights off Aku's Beatles in a proof of concept pitch for the network. Sadly, that's all I've been able to find. Unlike Ed and Eddie, where I had to pick and choose, Samurai Jack doesn't seem to have had that many promotional appearances, but as with the show itself, it seems to be a case of quality over quantity. And in case you think I forgot that episode of a certain show that's probably the most overt allusion to Samurai Jack, I'm gonna give this one its own look later. Like most Cartoon Network shows, Samurai Jack had his share of video games. First was the Amulet of Time in 2003, a Metroidvania game for the GBA where Jack must reconstruct an amulet that has the power to return him to the past. This was followed in 2004 by Shadow of Aku for GameCube and PS2. It's a standard action-adventure game where Jack searches for a time portal similar to the one from episode 14, but notable in that it features most of the cast from the show returning to voice of characters. As with Ed and Eddie, I wanted to play through these games and give an actual review, but they have never been re-released and copies are ridiculously expensive, though I have heard they're not worth my time. Jack, Aku, and the Scotsman all appear as playable characters in the crossover game Punch Time Explosion, a Super Smash Bros. Clone, and as of this video, Jack is currently playable in another platform fighter crossover, Multiverses. The 3+ Demongo were all NPCs and or assist characters in the defunct MMO Fusion Fall, and then of course there were multiple Samurai Jack Flash games on the old Cartoon Network site. Path of Destiny, which is basically a Robotron clone, Cavern Raid, a simplistic platformer with vertical element where he has to recover stolen food, Challenge of the Red Demons, a side-scrolling beat-em-up featuring Aku's shadow minions, Code of the Samurai, another action platformer with some surprisingly fluid animation, Desert Quest, another beat-em-up with detailed sprite work, Rave Slaves, a platformer inspired by episode 28, and Way of the Warrior, a minigame collection that follows young Jack's training in episode 1. I guess I should also mention the board game released to coincide with season 5, where players compete to send Jack back to the past by helping him gain honor. There was also that other game released long after all of these, but that's a tale for another time. And to wrap up the look through Samurai Jack related other media, the show is also the focus of a lot of comics, like a lot of comics, to the point I might as well give each series their own overview. As with Ed and Eddie, Jack had his own short comic adventures featured in the anthology Cartoon Network Action Pack, which again are too many to list within this time limit, so here are some of the standouts. There's a faithful retelling of the beginning arc, just redrawn in comic form. There's one where he has to survive an evil mini-march. There's one where he fights robotic duplicates of the Scotsman made by evil sheep. There's one where he's trapped between dimensions by a punk band powered by eggs and is saved through hippie peace. There's one where he has to free the Greek gods enslaved in a diner. There's one that's practically a copy of episode 6. There are quite a few that follow from episode 13, where Aku repeatedly tries to convince children that he's good and Jack's evil through retooled fairy tales. And there's one where he's tricked by animal rights extremists into freeing rampaging monsters onto his city, which he kills and stitches their hides into a hot air balloon to imprison the extremists, which holy wow is messed up. And there are a couple where his loyalty ends up ruining his chances of returning to the past, ignoring that if he went back he could prevent it from happening in the first place. Heck, one story even has Aku pointing out and taking advantage of that. Jack and Aku also appear in the crossover Super Secret Crisis War, where they're thankfully done a much better service than the Eds were, or at least their dialogue doesn't sound as awkward when read in their voices. Obviously the quality varies from story to story, but most if not all of them do keep that balance of action and surrealism the show is known for, and are worth at least a perusal if you can find them. Also, hello Huckleberry Hound. In 2013, IDW published a dedicated Samurai Jack series that lasted 20 issues, most of the stories forming their own serials. The first 5 issues make up the arc The Threads of Time, where Jack learns of a magical rope unwoven by Aku, but if he can find all the threads and twist them together again, he can use it to return to the past. Thus begins his journey towards the only known location of one, which is woven into a web by a spider demon and throws Jack into a coliseum, forcing him to fight all the gladiators at once. Jack emerges victorious, convinces the spider to let him go, and takes the thread on the way out. Next, Jack encounters a village tyrannized by feline martial artists who attack in perfect accord. Jack realizes their thread is keeping them in sync, so severs it in their ability, taking their threads and saving the village. Jack then enters an ancient Greek city where the Protector welcomes him in and gives him everything he could ask for. However, it comes under attack by Aku's Beetle army, and Jack is suddenly in ancient ruins, where the Protector, now a spirit, explains he had failed to save the city and has been using his thread to loop time and keep it alive. Jack tells him not to blame himself, and he passes on, leaving his thread for Jack. Next, Jack finds a poor village ruled by an immoral queen through her unspoiled beauty. After being captured and forced to work in her kitchen, the collected threads help Jack escape, where he leaps out of the queen's birthday cake, destroys her troops, and slices off her thread, which is keeping her young forever. Jack collects the thread and many others in his travels until he finds the last one in Aku's own fortress, where the tyrant has been using it as floss. After a fierce battle, Jack seizes the thread and reweaves the rope, but his distraction allows Aku to impale the samurai. Thus, he's forced to use the rope's remaining power to turn back time and save himself, escaping the fortress in search of a new way home. This is one of the best Samurai Jack stories, with issue 3 being my favorite, and definitely takes advantage of the looser restrictions of the comic medium. Issue 6 begins with another story arc, where Jack is attacked by a mysterious foe who knows his name, who turns out to be the Scotsman, but given a gender identity makeover. They find he was cursed by leprechauns because he was drunkenly demolishing their forest forest, and they will reverse the curse if they destroy an evil giant. Jack agrees, but for extra incentive, the leprechauns also turn him into a woman. The two new females journey long to find the giant, who turns out to be a stone golem, and after a brief fight, not even evil. In fact, its bellowing briefly deafens the duo and tunes out the leprechaun's cursing song, turning them back into men. Thus, they return to the leprechauns and pay them back in kind. The next 3 issues are all standalone stories. Jack seeks a peaceful night's rest in a capsule hotel, only for a coup to abscond with his room and plant him in a crystal cavern, where his reflections turn into evil, demented versions of himself. He slices them up, only for them to reform into a mishmash of parts and swords, who he finally defeats by bringing the cavern down on them. Next, Jack is wandering through ruins before the ground opens up and sucks him into the gravitational field of a giant robot. Jack manages to dodge and slice through the deadly debris and the robot's own defenses, finally slicing it in half and ending the battle. Finally, a coup, realizing Jack is too strong physically, decides to attack him on a mental level, crawling into his head, and even though there are a million things he can do at this point to destroy Jack, begins feasting on his memories, attempting to wipe out his mind. But it turns out Jack also possesses superior mental strength, and even his dreams are too much for the tyrant. These are all okay. I like the 5th one the best, but the first 2 I really wish were part of the actual show. And if the duo had been more of a reaction to and harder time dealing with their new forms, might have been best story. So let me know in the comments who you think they'd get to voice Jacqueline and the Scotswoman. The Quest of the Broken Blade makes up the next 5 issues. Jack finds an old sage who can use Jack's sword to send him back to the past. They travel until they arrive at the shrine where the ceremony can take place, and Jack protects the stage as he begins the ritual. Unfortunately, the sage is not strong enough to complete it, and the sword shatters, its righteous spirit disappearing forever. Aku immediately senses the sword's destruction, and knowing he's no longer a threat, broadcasts a worldwide brownie on Jack, who has now lost his greatest means of defense. When he finally feels safe, he reminisces on their history, realizing he's also lost an important part of himself and can never complete his quest. Much later, Jack has grown a full beard and hair to disguise himself from the relentless hunters, but is scratched by one of them, who analyzes his blood and finds it belonged to Jack, who barely escapes the city. With all hope gone, Jack gives up on life, only for a raven sent by Odin to bring him to the gods, who tell him the original sword was forged from his father's very essence and he never actually earned it. So to be worthy of the sword again, he's sent on his own spiritual journey, where he overcomes each obstacle and has his unworthiness literally burned away, even restoring him to his traditional appearance. But before anything else can happen, Aku finally tracks him down and Jack is forced to fight him with his bare hands. He struggles greatly, but Aku finally strikes him down. But before he can deliver the final blow, a new sword bursts out of Jack, one formed from his very essence, and one he can truly call his own. He uses it to defeat Aku, who barely escapes, swearing vengeance. Thus, Jack's quest can continue. Holy fudge balls, this was amazing! Easily in the top 3, if not the best story, period, and suspiciously similar to events in the Yet to Happen Season 5, so we're going to be talking about this again later. The last 5 issues start with the story arc. Jack journeys to meet the Master of Time, who claims to be working on a time talisman that Jack suspects can send him back in time. He infiltrates the Master's compound, dodging multiple traps, only to be stopped by security who throw him out. Needing help, he hires the thief from episode 39 to provide his own expertise, and they work together to dodge the security traps and find the Master in their chambers, only to learn the talisman is just a fancy watch and they leave disgusted. The final issues are all one-offs. Jack is led to what he's told is a time portal, only for it to be a trap by Aku and he's set upon by hundreds of Transformers-inspired robot warriors. He's overwhelmed, but 4 cyborg heroes arrive to help him, giving their lives to defeat the army. The surviving warrior nearly defeats Jack, but he uses some magic beans he bought earlier to hold it back so he can finish it off and stop this from happening again. Next, Jack reunites with the dogs from the start of his journey to explore the burial tomb of the first talking dog. However, they disturb its spirit, who turns the other dogs feral and sets them on Jack. But Jack tosses the spirit some doggy treats they have brought and is contented, restoring the team and even following Jack like a good boy. Finally, an old scribe travels the world looking for stories of Jack. After many dead ends, he finds someone who not only met Jack, but takes him to his camp, where many of the people and groups Jack's helped have gathered. And he finally meets Jack, where it's revealed this is the older Jack prophesied in episode 32, who's given up on returning to the past and instead is about to lead an assault on the coup and start a new future. And thus ends the comic run. These are pretty good, with some of the best artwork we've seen, and the last one is a perfectly serviceable ending for the series in general, to the point some argue it's better than what we got. And I like that the characters are named Lamar and Mako to reference Jack and Aku's voice actors. Quantum Jack is a miniseries released after season 5, but it takes place before then, so might as well show it here. The series features Jack finding himself becoming alternate versions of himself. First, he's the leader of a biker gang who are hired to retrieve a strange crate from a convoy. They get the crate only for Jack to see it's a stasis pod with a child. He refuses to give it up, fighting off the robot army and even his own gang with his magic baseball bat. The kid comes out of stasis, telling Jack he's training with fighters all around the world, which triggers a sense of familiarity in Jack and he's absorbed by a white light. Next, Jack is a masked wrestler in no-holds-barred wrestling match. A blow to the head suddenly makes visions of Jack's samurai life flash across his mind, also messing up his script and causing his boss to send all wrestlers in to destroy him. He defeats them all, including his boss, who had enslaved the wrestlers, and now they can go free before Jack disappears again. Now Jack is in a Pacific Rim-like scenario where he's piloting a giant robot against a sea monster, but this time he doesn't know a thing. But after some blows from the monster and more triggered visions, he remembers what to do and destroys the monster. Some Grim Reaper minions thank him for saving Aku's slaves before he again vanishes. This time he's a cubicle worker working next to the Scotsman in a corporation headed by Aku. He goes through the workday routine, even finding he's married with kids, but traumatic memories start assaulting his mind. He finally becomes lucid enough to remember and even find his sword, and he says goodbye to the life he wishes he could have had. The light comes again, and we see Jack had freed the inventor of a time machine from Aku. But as the inventor tries to explain the gadget, Aku and his minions find their lab, and he's forced to use it on Jack, which is what triggered the universe hopping. Jack tries to regain his senses, but is pushed back by Aku, and next becomes a tiger, and that's seriously where it ends. This is okay, kind of matching the series of Quantum Leap, but it doesn't feel like much happens in 5 issues, and I don't like the artwork. Basically the same level as the Quantum Leap revival. And finally for comics, there's Samurai Jack Lost Worlds, again released after season 5, but taking place before then. First, Jack returns to a town that he's helped guide in his image, which is a surprise to the real Jack hiding in a nearby cave who confronts his doppelganger. After a long fight, he decapitates it, revealing it's a robot created by scientists to help give the village guidance, and reminding Jack of his quest he grew disheartened with. The villagers discover the other Jack was an imposter and destroy the rest of it, but the scientists release another Jack replica that pretends to be the real one to continue guiding the people. Next, Jack is forced to travel through Haunted Village, where he's attacked by invisible foes. He toughs it out, but is eventually knocked out and awakes to find the town is secretly populated by the few survivors of his telekinetic race who just want to be left alone. He leaves and promises not to tell anyone. Then Jack is hunted down by a trio of bears who at first repels, but is caught and thrown in a prison truck. He gets out of his cuffs and helps the other prisoners escape, only to learn that the bears are bounty hunters for the afterlife, tracking down spirits who escaped hell, and mistaking Jack for one because of his long lifespan. But after signing some papers, he's left alone and they go to recapture the fugitives. Finally, Jack is the passenger aboard a ship of sapient cats and dogs who are out to prove the world is flat. After a long time, they're attacked by a giant octopus, where despite Jack's best efforts, the captain is eaten. Jack tells the new captain to turn back, but it looks like the Earth is indeed flat and other giant monsters are trying to push them off the edge. After many days of sailing along, Jack has had enough of the flat Earth theory and steers the ship towards the edge to prove it a trick, only for the boat to sail off the edge, and again, that's where the series ends. This was interesting. I like the more anime-style artwork, and issue 3 was my favorite, but it's inessential and nothing really sticks. Alright, I put it off for long enough. Next time we talk season 5. After over a decade, repeated aborted attempts, and most of the fan base giving up hope for an official conclusion, Samurai Jack finally received a 5th and final season in 2017. This time making the leap to adult Adult Swim to account for the show's now mostly grown audience. Reactions were mixed, with some fans calling it a perfect long-awaited finale and others thinking it's a tone-deaf, disappointing mess. And sadly, I'm in the latter camp. Yeah, I'm gonna be upfront and say I don't like a lot of the season, so if you don't want to hear a negative review, skip the rest of this retrospective. And there's a lot to unpack, so I'm gonna break my under a minute rule and probably hit the maximum shorts length for most of these. The first episode, or episode 92 as it's known to account for the large time skip and possibly adventures in other media we've gone over, starts off so well. A parent and a child who can only talk through visuals being cornered by darker, more sinister-looking beetle robots when suddenly a masked motorcycle warrior shows up and saves them, going all Gears of War on the robots. And it turns out to be Jack himself, finally embracing this time period's technology and strangely using a gun instead of a sword. Both the battle and the backgrounds are very accurate to the original show style, but with the benefit of more modern animation software that allows for more detail on a 16:9 screen ratio, giving so much more scope, color, and depth to everything. And again, it's very violent without actually being violent. These first 3 minutes are a very good sign. Sadly, the cracks start to show immediately after. They changed the intro to reflect the new and more mature season, and I hate it. It's just Jack narrating about how 50 years have passed and he hasn't aged, while generic dramatic music plays under it. If they wanted a more mature sound, do a metal remix of the theme or something. Heck, they retain the original credits music, and it feels so wrong after sitting through the tone this sets. Also, it just feels wrong to hear Jack refer to himself as Samurai Jack, especially since, as many have pointed out, he's more accurately a Ronin and or Prince, but I guess that doesn't have the same ring to it. The rest of his screen time is basically Jack in PTSD land, which I get. After so long, yes, his sanity would be deteriorating, especially after what we find happened to his sword. But 1, the episode grinds to a halt 3 times for him to have a freak out, and 2, his hallucinations range from horribly overdramatic to just plain silly. I hate that I'm saying this, but the mental trauma in Velma had more impact in relation to the plot and characters. And it ends things with a fight against the musical-themed robot assassin Scaramouche, which I don't like as much as the beginning fight. The animation's more fluid than the original series, and that's the problem. There's basically no sense of weight or dynamic composure. Nothing feels as impactful or visually appealing as the original fights. So ironically, by showing more, they're showing less. Not helping is that Scaramouche is incredibly annoying and just gets worse later. In fact, the fight just gives up. Scaramouche, for no reason, just stands there and lets Jack throw an exploding knife at him, then suddenly Jack has the assassin's sword and uses it to cleave them in half while they don't even move. I had to watch this scene from a couple different sources. I was convinced the one I'm using cut something out, but no, that's just how it's edited. Even the way the oil flows out of him just looks ridiculous. And while all this is going on, we also see the birth and life of the literal daughters of Aku, all conceived and trained specifically to destroy Jack. Though one of them seems to show conscience, and yeah, with these little kids getting brutalized, this is where the show first demonstrates its more mature rating. Though this does have the best visuals of the episode, so while I can tell they tried, they worked their fingers to the bone and exhausted themselves to make this season, this is not a good beginning or sign of things to come, which, spoilers, are just gonna get worse. Also, this dominatrix trainer be thick! Episode 93 starts with Aku. Yeah, Aku's here, I thought they were building up to him, but nope, started the second episode, here he is, and yes, he is voiced by a different actor since his original died soon after the first series ended. To his credit, they sound almost exactly alike, to the point you'd have to know they had gotten someone else. I'm also impressed they retained Jack's original actor, since he's, well, not Japanese, which they could get away with in the early 2000s, but not so much by this point. So I'm pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, I don't like the sequence of the coup. These Looney Tunes-like gags and visuals might have worked in the more lighthearted and comedic original series, but they contrast so badly with the tone the first episode set. At the very least, they could have had Aku kill someone, show that he can get away with that now. Heck, he got away with that in the original show. As is, this sketch where he's talking to himself as a psychiatrist, explaining how he's also stressed Jack is still around, doesn't accomplish anything. Though I do love when they both stare into the camera. There's also this subplot featuring a wolf fighting these tiger-like things with enormous mouths that I do love the designs of, and I think it's supposed to parallel Jack and his lone wolf mentality, but it really doesn't go anywhere. That said, the rest of the episode is amazing. After an impressive shot of him effortlessly destroying a giant beetle robot that Aku's scientists earlier were so proud of, Jack is suddenly attacked by the daughters of Aku, who hit him hard and mercilessly, destroying everything he owns and once again leaving him with nothing. He only barely gets away and finds shelter, where we're also introduced to Mad Jack, his split personality hallucination, who repeatedly tells Jack to admit defeat and just end it all, and who have made a much better vision than what the previous episode hit us with. He narrowly escapes his shelter and retreats into the ruins of a temple, where we get some of the best visuals of the entire show. We have slow motion, we have scenes illuminated only by fireflies, we have these incredible white on black visuals that I always love to see, and we even get some first-person running perspectives, like this is a retro 3D maze game. Plus all these shots of the daughters fading into the shadows, taking full advantage of their solid black forms with white masks. It's like episode 40, but a million times better. Every single second, there's something new and exciting to notice, and it's all done with no dialogue, allowing the visuals to speak for themselves, including that even with 7 of them exploring each and every corridor, Jack is still too slippery for them. My only gripe is the music playing when they're looking for Jack hidden in one of the stone coffins, and it's some weird Victorious-sounding orchestral score, when it would have had much more tension if they just kept it silent. So Jack's impossible leap here almost makes up for it, and like the previous times I've brought it up, I don't like that there are 7 completely interchangeable warriors, when 4 at most would have worked just as well. It's just an indicator of how disposable they'll later turn out to be, but we get the biggest shock when Jack actually kills one of them and is stunned to see it's an actual human. Yeah, we'll talk about this next time. Oh, and he gets stabbed and pulls off one final cool move by using Scaramouche's tuning fork sword to crumble the temple before it jumps into the river. Again, really showing their mature rating here. Major improvement over the previous episode, to the point this is easily top 10, if not top 5 in the entire series. Sadly, this is the peak, with 8 episodes to go. Episode 94 shows Jack somehow managing to survive bleeding out and even going over a waterfall in an honestly beautiful sequence of him being swept down a river. Eventually, he reaches land and hides in a cave, where he pulls out the dagger, again reminding us this is the adult version of the show, and has to deal with Mad Jack taunting him about killing a human for the first time. And while the demented visuals of Jack's hallucination are really good, this is where I have to call BS. I don't care what the creator says, we have seen Jack kill flesh and blood beings in the original show, intentionally and otherwise. And even ignoring that, Jack has never shown a hesitation to kill, just never a need to. If he can disarm or incapacitate his opponent, that's all the energy he needs to spend to get them out of his way. It's never been a moral issue for him, just a matter of, again, not having to play an ace when a 2 does just fine. And even if he's never killed a human, he has killed, for all intents and purposes, sapient beings, even in cold blood. What, he's fine with it as long as it doesn't bleed red? That's actually more messed up, so no, I don't buy this moral crisis bull honky for a second. The wolf from the previous episode also shows up, having somehow survived its own battle, and they bachelor padded for a while as they heal. Again, I think this is trying to be commentary on how being a lone wolf is a bad mindset and everybody needs somebody, but it really doesn't go anywhere and you never see the wolf again. Oh, but they have a belch off because ha ha ha. Jack also has a flashback to the first time he had to witness violence as his father dispatched a group of assassins in front of him, and he explains they gave him no other choice. Which again, Jack seemed to show an understanding of in the original series. I don't know why this is treating that show like it was all sunshine and rainbows. But it does mean that when the daughters of Aku track him down again after a very long time given his injuries have fully healed, he gives them the choice to just leave and be spared, which they don't take, therefore he dispatches them surprisingly easy given how much trouble they originally were for him. Now to play devil's advocate, Jack is now aware they exist and prepared for them, and he's facing them in his own territory since apparently the group have never been in a forest-like setting, which seems like a major oversight in their years and years of training. Heck, they don't even know what animals are given how they react to these deer and how Jack is able to use a crow to distract and kill one. So it's stupid, but a different kind of stupid than most fans point out. And the fight scene is pretty good, again utilizing black on white in this winter setting, with some red because if you forgot, this show is now for adults. And even without his sword, Jack is an ultimate powerhouse as he unalives seemingly all of them, but ends up doing himself in too. Despite my critiques, this episode is not terrible and does keep my attention enough to want to know what happens next. Also, did anyone else expect these deer to start banging? Episode 95 actually has a very good beginning, where Jack somehow survives his 100-foot drop and realizes the carnage he's caused, hallucinating a flock of crows calling him a murderer. I like this a lot better than Mad Jack trying to shame him in the last episode, because it shows that even if Jack shouldn't be hesitant about killing someone, he still has to come to terms with it afterwards. And it turns out one of the daughters, named Ashi, survived and tries again to kill Jack, but he leaves her hanging with her own chain, and it is really funny watching her fling threats and insults as she repeatedly swings on and off camera. Sadly, the good mostly comes to an end as they're swallowed by an enormous monster, and we basically get an extended version of episode 21, where Jack has to once again escape the internal world of the creature's innards. Oh wait, it's not just Jack, as he also has to drag along Ashi, as she's all the while screaming at him and even trying to get them both killed, with both Mad Jack and a British puffball insisting he leave her behind. And no, that's not a slur, he hallucinates a talking bit of pollen with an English accent. To the episode's credit, the visuals are great, with some very imaginative environments that seem solid yet organic, and Jack once again proves he's a master with any and all weapons he can get his hands on. Probably my favorite part is Jack defeating a monster off screen, since not seeing the fight makes it funnier to imagine what happened. Plus, Jack's scream of annoyance as he tries to fend off monsters while Ashi is still trying to kill him. And we get some impressive lighting and color effects depending on where they are in the creature's anatomy. Sadly, through all this, we have to deal with Jack and Ashi bickering, with Jack repeatedly trying and failing to keep his patience. And based on this, you can probably tell where the rest of the show is going. It's gonna be every romance plot ever, where the leads absolutely hate each other, but in the end, they can't live without one another. Yes, this more mature take on an action-based series has decided to model itself after a Hallmark Christmas movie. Heck, they even give Jack really cheesy lines found in one of those flicks, where he's trying to joke and improve the mood, when him saying absolutely nothing would have helped so much more. I'm not opposed to Ashi being turned to his side, and even them becoming friends, but not in the way they're showing it. And it's about to get so much worse. After a sequence involving alien fauna and a skeletal flying fish with again some great lighting effects, they exit out of the creature and into an ocean. I don't know how they got there either. But they find an island, and Ashi even finds her weapon, but before she can use it, she sees Jack being kind to a ladybug, which reminds her of how she tried to be kind to one, but her mother kills it because it's not part of Aku's order. Meaning this should actually give Ashi more reason to kill Jack, as he's interacting with things that go against her teachings, but it's what convinces her to join Jack. Yeah, this is where the show starts to really plummet in quality and doesn't stop until it hits the ground with a wet, smelly splat, and overall I think I actually would rather watch Disney's Strange World. Episode 96 again starts out so well, with the return of the Scotsman, his army, and his very prolific offspring as they begin an assault on Aku's fortress, because hey, if Jack's given up, somebody has to do it. It goes about as well as you'd expect, with Aku demolishing the army in no time while being happy as a distraction from the funk he's in, and the Scotsman gets his as well, but he goes out doing what he does best with an incredible iceberg of insults. Oh, but then he just comes back as a ghost and tells everyone to find Jack, so yeah, that added a lot, but it was at least more fun than what comes next, where Jack and Ashi ride a dragon off the island and Jack bids farewell. After Ashi has an argument with her mother in the moon, which I'm sorry, looks too funny to be taken seriously. Now, if the show had Ashi going off on her own journey, questioning everything she knows, trying to work it out herself, whose side she wants to be on, that would at least be something, but no, she comes right back and demands Jack explain why Aku is so evil, which he does after a cutesy story about the sun and moon, you know, in the season made for adults. And then take a trip across the world, where he shows her the one lone tree and what used to be a forest full of them, standing as an example of Aku's power, even though that more seems like a symbol of defiance to me. They go to Aku's city, where Jack steals some new clothes, and for some reason it's done in that old Celdron style, where, gee, I wonder if he's gonna grab the one not part of the background. Then he shows her that Aku welcomes evil criminals to his world, specifically to snuff out anything that's good and pure, and after a few more stops at dead stuff, Ashi is completely convinced that Aku is evil. Yes, the guy she's known for maybe a few days by this point has completely reversed the ideals she's literally been born and raised in, and eradicated any and all conditioning she's received. And really, she's seeing all this for the first time? She was never given a counter-argument for everything, like Aku has to destroy the world to shape it in his own image and wipe out anything that gets in the way of his perfect order? For someone who is literally conceived and spent at least 2 decades dedicated entirely to serving Aku and destroying Jack, she has less training and information than a background bounty hunter. Also, this is a me thing, but I don't like her voice. Tara Strong is an amazing voice actress, but her voice for Ashi sounds so try-hard and fake. Maybe she just wasn't given the time or direction, but every time she opens her mouth, it just sounds like some kid going, "Grr, I'm a toughie, take me seriously." Someone trying to act than actually act, but I digress. On their journey, they just so happen to come across a destroyed town where all the children have been taken, and when they track them down, it turns out they've been implanted with chips that turn them into horrible slavering beasts, and oh my god! Okay, it's official, this season just can't do dramatic or scary, and these expressions Jack and Ashi make really don't help their case. But after another really cool visual of Ashi disappearing behind pipes, then escaping capture by this red guy, she shuts down the chip and knocks out the kids, and since nobody in media knows how to take a pulse, Jack thinks they're dead, and that he killed them, even though he clearly didn't. So he runs off with the shadowy warrior that he keeps hallucinating with Ashi right behind him. Oh god, this was bad. The worst episode we've seen up to this point. And I wish it was the worst of the entire series. Also, I'm surprised they didn't have this guy's plug located where you think they'd put it. Episode 97 is basically a tribute to the show. Ashi travels the world looking for Jack, which is what I suggested she do in the first place, and she just so happens to come across Jack's old friends and allies, hearing their stories and just how great a guy Jack is. This is a clip show, except not really. We do see scenes and characters from the original series, but they went to the effort to reanimate and revoice them, so they fit more in line with the new season, and aren't obviously stretched out or have annoying 4x3 black bars on the sides. I've heard complaints that this style's just different enough to be uncanny, but I don't really see it and it doesn't bother me, especially since they also went to the trouble of mimicking the classic screen effects, and for some of the stops they do try something new. She visits Stas Samurai, this time voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, and his flashbacks are in the style of old disco record artwork, and when she visits the Ravers, the song they composed in tribute to Jack is one of the best moments in the show, period. Especially this S-shape they do with their hands. While this is mostly just a tribute to the original series, it is a good tribute, and for fans tuning in to watch this new season who may not have seen the original series in a while, it was probably exciting to see all these familiar faces. That is, if they watched to this point and the last few episodes didn't completely turn them off. We also learned that the black stuff Ashi is wearing is some kind of boiling black gunk she was forced to dive into when she was young. Coal, tar, essence of evil, I don't know, and this is gonna make less sense later, and she seems to agree as she spends the night scrubbing it off, revealing very nice skin for someone horribly burned as a child, as well as unbelievably good foliage tailorship for someone taught only to fight all their lives. Sadly, during all this, we also see that Scaramouche has somehow survived his duel with Jack and is on his own trip to tell Aku Jack's lost his sword. I didn't like this guy in the first place, but he was serviceable as a beginning villain, but now we have to hear him, his lack of charm, and his ear-grating voice for more of the season. Hooray! But again, to their credit, they try to make him work. He goes through various guises when he's told he needs a body to board the boat, and in the process, he apparently decapitated a small dog. That's some dark humor I'm actually fine with seeing in this season. Not so much later when he literally calls someone a memberhead. In fact, this episode has the first bits of swearing in the entire series. Nothing too explicit, but a few damns and hells among others, which, as long as they can restrain themselves, I'm fine with. We also get some weird cameos in here, like Popeye, Astro from the Jetsons, and hey look, Damongo survived Aku's wrath. Unfortunately, the ending almost ruins everything. Ashi finds Jack in a graveyard, and right when he's about to commit seppuku, and that spirit warrior that's been following him around is apparently real and encouraging him to do it. Why? What is he? I don't know. But even as Ashi is telling Jack of all the good he's done, he's still ready to stab himself and only relents when Ashi tells him that he didn't kill the kids, which, like I said, his dumbass should have known if he took a second to, actually check on them. But he does change his mind about shish kebabbing himself and even finds the renewed willpower to go find his long-lost sword, because hey, Ashi wearing that could convince anyone to do anything. This is technically one of the best episodes of the season, but just remember to fast forward past most of Scaramouche's scenes and skip the ending entirely. And why was Jack a woman in the rave song? Episode 98, I don't know what to think. It opens with a flashback and Jack coming the closest he ever has to returning to the past, but Aku catches him at the last second and destroys allegedly the last magical device that can possibly return Jack to the past. And just to rub salt in the wound, he sends giant mutant monsters after him, which he's forced to kill, and they turn out to be the cute little goats that followed him up the hill. And in his shock and disbelief, he ends up losing his sword down a deep chasm. Again, not a bad opening and gives the more mature elements a chance to shine, but then we cut to the present and Jack and Ashi are suddenly on a giant bird flying right back to where he dropped the sword. Which wait, Jack never even looked? He never tried going down the chasm himself to recover the most important thing in his his life? I guess not, and after a very short search gives up and concedes that the sword deemed him unworthy. So he meditates to enter a realm and speak with a monk who can tell him where to get a new sword, because he can do that now, don't question it, he just can. While Jack is traveling the astral plane, a giant army shows up to kill them, then Ashi has to fight off herself. I went back and forth trying to decide if I like this scene or not, and I think I do. Ashi has been trained all her life to be a warrior strong enough to take down Jack, so it kinda makes sense she has the strength and dexterity to take out an entire army. Plus, this is just a fun sequence and the most brutal fight in the entire series, but in a good way, where everything is kept exciting and visually interesting. While again showing this season is made more for adults, and it's possibly the closest this new season comes to replicating the style of the original. Then her mother shows up and demands she kills Jack, but Ashi has completely drunk the Kool-Aid and is 100% on his side, no doubts whatsoever. So she has to defend herself and Jack, and again a very intense fight scene and a pretty satisfying villain death. Meanwhile, Jack has a very long sequence where he makes tea for the monk, who tells him it's awful. The ingredients are all there, but it lacks balance. A good review of the season in general. Then Mad Jack shows up again, and Jack has to face him to get his sword back. And while that sounds like a good climax, this is literally the last minute. Mad Jack just appears to yell at the monk. Jack says, "Hey dude, you're the reason I can't get the sword, so I'm done with you," and vaporizes him on the spot. And then the gods show up to tell him, "Congratulations, you've won the prize of a new sword and a complimentary makeover to go with it." What should have been an intense emotional moment where Jack realizes he needs to let go of the anger that's been festering inside of him in order to move on, and what most of the season has been focusing on, is just swept under the rug and resolved as suddenly as Jack announcing he's finally going to find his sword. And it's time to bring this up again. This season, and this episode in particular, share very similar elements with the Quest of the Broken Blade comic story we went over, right down to Jack losing his sword, meeting the gods, and even being restored to his original design. I don't know what agreement writer Jim Zub and the studio had, or even if Tartakovsky came up with the story and just told him to write it, but I feel Jim should have gotten a credit for at least this episode. And needless to say, I enjoyed that miniseries a lot more than how things are playing out in this season, to the point I think they should have just gone the DCU animated original route and adapted that as the finale. As is, this is one of the most disappointing episodes of the series. What could have been a great sequence of both Jack and Ashi having to confront their inner demons and deciding who they want to be is sidelined in favor of some decent but otherwise pointless long action and tea-making scenes, with anything of importance rushed like this was a two-parter condensed into one, and I'll watch episodes 45 and 46 any day over this. Episode 99 is the most pointless episode of the season. Despite making it clear they have to get to a coup, Jack is fine with taking the scenic route because he might be getting the feels for Ashi. Yeah, for this episode they're pretty much on a date, which where did that come from? Yes, Jack has shown appreciation for Ashi's help, but not romantic feelings. There is such a thing as platonic love and appreciating someone as a friend and accomplice, which is what I thought they were setting up. But no, like I mentioned earlier, the show is turning into a cheesy rom-com and Jack and Ashi have to end up together, and it is so forced. A lot of fans point out the significant age gap between the two, but one, I don't really have as much of a problem with that in relationships, and two, there's really not. If we accept that Jack is around 25 based on the first episode and he hasn't aged since entering the future, then he's technically still 25 even 50 years later, and Ashi is likely in her late teens or early 20s, so there's a perfectly healthy age gap between them. No, my problem is that Ashi should be one screwed up woman right now. Besides being tortured and forced to fight all her life, in just a short amount of time she's seen her sisters killed right in front of her, found out that everything she ever knew was a lie, and had to kill her mother. And none of this is ever addressed. Ashi shows no trauma for anything because hey, the only awkwardness allowed is when they're trying to hold onto a bus pole and their hands keep touching. And even ignoring Ashi's issues, Jack should be incredibly hesitant about showing feelings for his traveling companion, especially since the last time he and a strong beautiful woman trekked across the world, it didn't end well for him. But no, we're just gonna forget about Jack's past and the million reasons he should be very uneasy traveling with Ashi, and laugh that he has a fish head from eating weird food. Yeah, if you haven't guessed, the writing has become really bad. It's Jack trying to make jokes and lighten the mood like we see in episode 95, except more frequently and even more awkward. And when they're surrounded by this green tiger gang who for some reason have letters on their shirts that they used to spell things only the audience would notice, he says they're not alone, which no duh, there wasn't any other way you could phrase that. But to their credit, their battle against the gang and the expressions the tigers make is pretty fun, like if the shirt tails were the crazy 88. They escape and make their way on foot, all while being cute to each other, and again, Jack should be getting some serious PTSD from all this. And then they find an alien ship, because why not, where they're attacked by an alien leech colony that they can only fight off using a device that, of course, Jack was distracted while hearing the directions for. And that's another problem with this season. Jack is so stupid. Who wants a master strategist that uses mind just as much as his muscle is now comfortable with wandering unfamiliar halls while cluelessly pecking at an electronic device? Suddenly, he's become the meathead fighter he would have been if he wasn't given an education in addition to training. You know, like Ashi should be, except somehow she's the smarter one here. And as fans have pointed out, this whole sequence is basically an allegory for sex, something I don't think Ashi even knows about since she's unaware being naked is supposed to be awkward. So not only should her mind be a mess, she basically has a child's mentality, which makes their crushes even creepier. All culminating in the worst shot in the entire series. When I saw clips of this from other reviews, I thought they put the music in as a joke, but no, they literally play Everybody Loves Somebody over this footage, which is normally done ironically, but is used completely seriously over a shot of Jack and Ashi kissing. Yep, Jack and Ashi have gone from at best a student-teacher relationship to wanting to make babies in one episode, and I have never felt so dirty. It's a clear sign the the show is now in free fall and the ground is quickly coming up to meet it. I don't even have an ending remark, I'm so skeeved out. Episode 100 is the penultimate of the series, unfortunately picking up right where the last episode left us. Jack and Ashi have awkward small talk followed by an awkward dinner where ha 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 they can't cook. Seriously, did they get their scripts mixed up with the Great American Family Movie of the Week? Thankfully, it's followed by Jack giving a good story about his childhood before a coup and how he's anxious to return to his own time, and how Ashi wants to be the one to, well, sheath his sword, since that's what the series has suddenly decided their relationship is. We also see Scaramouche has finally made it to a coup, and after an unfunny bit within a coup-shaped intercom, they barge in and tell Aku Jack has lost his sword, which he didn't already know. Wasn't it established in the original series that Aku was always watching Jack? Was he never suspicious Jack never used his sword after that encounter? I guess not, because he's overjoyed, and after restoring Scaramouche's body, they do a cringeworthy dance. Seriously, comedy has never been this show's strong suit, but how is the show for kids so much funnier than the show for adults? Oh, but that's nothing compared to what happens next. Remember episode 32 with the invincible guardian guarding the portal Jack is prophesized to one day be strong enough to use, which a lot of fans thought would be how the series ended? Yeah, it's gone and the guardian is dead. This is such a slap to the face, I think my nose is currently in orbit. If Jack and Ashi kissing was the worst shot in the entire show, well, this is tied for that. Aku shows up, finds out Jack has his sword, mercifully kills Scaramouche, and then gets really creepy as he detects his scent on Ashi, because I guess he just forgot he gave his essence to a woman so she could birth his children, all dedicated to killing Jack. Seriously, what was even the point of Aku in this season? All he does is wallow in his own misery until the show decides he should be active for a minute. But his essence inside Ashi means he can control her and even transform her into a replica of himself in what could have been the most horrifying sequence in the show. The problem is they've given me no reason to care about Ashi and have royally pissed me off by this point. And of course, Jack can bring himself to kill Ashi, so Aku takes him and his sword prisoner to end the episode on admittedly a cooling style painting. And because I've been keeping this in, and I know I'm not going to have time to address this in the next video, here's a major issue about the show I've been waiting to talk about. There is no reason for the 50-year time skip, nor any reason Jack is ageless. It's the exact same broken world of different eras we saw in the original series, so nothing has advanced. The only thing that's changed is that the supporting characters have gotten older, but they act the exact same way since we last saw them, so it makes no difference. It's like saying the world is now covered in strawberry jam, except everyone acts how we saw them before. They're just covered in jam. In fact, knowing so much time has passed kind of makes Jack look worse, as he's just been spending decades feeling sorry for himself and moping that he lost his sword instead of helping out or even settling down. Or even leading a resistance against Aku like the ending to the comic series. This could have been 5 or even just 1 year after the original series and have made just as much difference. Pretty bad to have one of the major attributes of your world be completely pointless. Yeah, this episode is just as bad as the last, if not more, thanks to the revelation about the Guardian, but nothing we've seen so far compares to the finale, so let's finally get to that. Episode 101 closes out the entire series. Aku proudly broadcasts to the entire world that he's captured Jack, because somehow the entire world, even places without electricity, have televisions. Personally, I'd have him displaying his image in the sky for all the world to see, but I guess they thought this was funnier. We're shown the original show's opening with the new voice of Aku doping over it before he announces that he will finally destroy the samurai. It's just that he's waited so long he can't decide what method is most satisfying, which you'd think he would have figured out before he broadcast himself to the entire world, but as soon as Jack, everyone who originally showed great strategy and cunning has to be reduced to an idiot. And in addition to everyone having TV, everyone also knows each other and is faster than light travel, as suddenly all of Jack's friends mass into one large army to distract Aku. To the episode's credit, the visuals are great. The scope really does make it feel like a finale, with all these familiar faces gathering to show how much Jack means to them. The problem is that it's the show paying tribute to itself again, showing how great the original seasons were while making it more obvious this season has practically nothing to call its own. Yeah, it's nice to see everyone again, even again, but they've done nothing up to this point. They're just here to remind us they exist. Even the Scotsman is such a letdown, since he gave the impression he was going to find Jack, but next time we see him, he's just at home watching TV. Though his bagpipe magic almost makes up for it. Also, I thought the Woolies hated being used as mounts and the fish people breathed air, but I digress. Meanwhile, Jack is trying to free Ashi from Aku, but is literally not getting through to her. So what does he do? He says he loves her, and it works. Yes, this season made for an adult audience has the villain being defeated by the power of love. She also keeps her black form, which makes her washing it off earlier even more confusing. And if she's part of Aku, doesn't that mean Jack would have needed his sword to kill the sisters, like that time he took on the robots powered by Aku? I don't know, they're just making things up on the spot. Case in point, Jack points out Ashi has Aku's powers, and she instantly opens a portal back in time, because she just knows how to do that now. And yep, that's how Jack's journey ends, Deus Ex Machina, though I do love Aku's look of ultimate defeat and regret. Speaking of, Jack appears seconds after his past self leaves, which again is given an impressive recreation, and finishes the job he started, and somehow he does something that I guess finishes off Aku once and for all, and maybe he won't return in 8 years again? I don't know, but we're almost done. Jack and Ashi get married and invite all his friends, again in a nice visual tribute to episode 1, but as a final kick to the groin, the universe picks the most dramatic moment to realize that if Aku never existed, neither would Ashi, and she vanishes. Which means Jack should also vanish, because everything he's ever experienced, heck, everyone he's ever met, technically has also never existed, which the show could have touched on instead of suddenly decided to be a romance, but nope, we just get a shot of Jack and a ladybug, because I guess ladybugs are now the show's mascot, and thus ends one of the worst finales to one of the worst seasons to one of the best shows shows I've ever seen. Well, that was a sour note to end on, so let's not end on it. Let's keep this going for as long as we can. In 2020, Adult Swim Games released Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. This was the only game that had Tartakovsky's involvement, and it took this opportunity to try to fix some of the show's backlash. At the moment Jack and Ashi begin their trip back to the past, Aku tries one last-ditch effort to stop them, separating the two and sending Jack seemingly back to the very beginning of his journey. It's your basic action-adventure gameplay where Jack goes from room to room, completing platform elements and avoiding traps. Spacing them out are rooms where he must defeat all enemies to proceed. There's gold to collect and the occasional trainer to spend it on upgrades, while also finding familiar faces who help in their own way. Eventually, Jack learns that this world is one created by Aku from Jack's experiences, as well as Aku bracelets that, when destroyed, teleport him to another familiar world, which I do have to question their choices, though I like how they straight up kill the clinches. Eventually, Jack is stranded in the world based on Season 5, where Aku has removed all the bracelets, leaving Jack's travel solely up to his whim. And while Jack tries to prevent some of his original choices, everything plays out similarly, except thanks to Aku, he ends up killing Ashi. But it turns out not to be Ashi, as the real Ashi is trying to reach Jack through her own portals. And after a showdown with Aku, she manages to pull him free and back on track, returning to the past and everything that follows, except if Jack collects all 50 coins, there's a secret ending where Ashi is not erased from time. How eludes me, something about the dimension keeping her existing, but it's something. While this isn't a game I would normally play, I recognize the talent behind it and that they went to the effort to fix one of the series' biggest controversies. It doesn't make the season better, but it's an effort. Also, more Demongo isn't a bad thing. Let's wrap things up with the Duck Dodgers episode, Samurai Quack. During Sushi Night, Duck Dodgers, or Daffy if you prefer, eats a poisonous pufferfish, and the toxin causes him to hallucinate himself in the Samurai Jack universe. Parody is one of those works that's easy to do but hard to do right, and I'm happy to say this isn't just a good Samurai Jack parody, this is one of the best parodies I've ever seen. Just switching out the noble and fearless Jack with the selfish and cowardly Daffy presents a lot of potential, going for the exit portal instead of saving people, for instance. Also, Daffy is a lot more bored during the long establishing shots and walking sequences the show is known for, to the point he just starts narrating what's happening. So when he comes across robots, his tone changes to be more excited, like it's about time he got to do something. And while Jack is bolstered by thoughts of his parents and their wisdom, Daffy's parents were jerks, so he doesn't get anything from them. This episode has such a knowledge and love for the show's style, replicating it faithfully, but also having fun with it, like Daffy pushing on the screen borders or a slot machine replacing split screens. They even point out how often Jack's hair is messed up, despite always having it tied back, and the goofy characters usually forced in to keep the show kid-focused. But the best joke is where Tartakovsky himself makes a cameo to say the show can't get as violent as it has a lower TV rating. As the topper, we have Mako voicing the Aku stand-in, who's also a reference to the character he voices in the Duck Dodgers show, giving this joke multiple layers. While the ending's a bit anticlimactic, this was one of the funniest things I've seen in recent memory, and a great tribute to a great show. Well, that's it for my look at Samurai Jack. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you for my next Under a Minute series.